Lin and Noah approached. Bota immediately asked, "Did you two close that gate?" The boy hummed in affirmation. Noah's bright blue eyes narrowed slightly. He seemed bored and said, "More outsiders like Gong Ti?" Hearing this, Sonia rushed forward, startling the two children. She asked insistently, "Gong Ti, you know him? Is he still alive?" Ignoring her completely, the two children turned to look at each other. Lin guessed this lady must be his girlfriend. Noah also nodded in agreement, but Sonia's face darkened, denying it immediately. No. The two children acted as if they were deaf, not listening to her words. They walked ahead and then turned back to tell the group, "We're waiting for you to follow us." The flashlight beam shone directly into their faces, but no one bothered to move. Bota didn't know what to do, so he turned to call Kana. She pondered for a moment and then decided, "Let's go with them." Then, Kana turned to the guild master, whose face was still as bruised as a torn blanket. Standing behind her, she asked, "It seems we're lost, aren't we?" Following the two children, the group waded through the water, everyone in a ready-to-fight stance to protect themselves from any sudden dangers. Everyone left the ruins, moving forward, the flashlight beams growing more distant. As soon as they left, the water surface became strangely calm again. Then it flashed with a ghostly blue light. Out of the dark cellar, on a floating raft, were hundreds of people. A man held his head, his face full of despair. He lamented in frustration, "I just thought I was going to survive, but now we're dead for sure." The others were no better. Their whole bodies trembled, their heads bowed. A few children buried their faces in their knees, crying their hearts out in fear, calling for their mothers. A girl sitting next to them gently comforted, "Don't cry." She held the face of a child slightly younger than her who was in tears, as if speaking to him, and also as if convincing herself, "We'll be rescued soon. Kana and Bota will never abandon us." Immediately after, the man sitting next to them poured cold water on their hopes. He said, "Pointless. How can they find us if they don't even know where we are?" He bowed his head, muttering in despair, "It's over, it's really over." Lita heard this, then lowered her head. Hiding her sad eyes, she thought worriedly, "Have they all given up?" Her eyes drooped, the light in them gradually fading. Lita thought, "It feels just like before." The scene from her memory returned, horrifying monsters crawling in her mind. The image of the resilient boy appeared again, but she thought Bota might be scared too. Her hand tightened around the sword. She secretly believed, but he always fights to the end. Two small figures stood before the monster. She was always full of faith in her brother. "My brother never gives up." Letting the boy next to her lean on her and fall asleep, Lita stared silently into the distance. An iron bar pierced through the ground like the rising spirit of humanity. Lita refused to give in, thinking to herself, "I also I would fight if I could." Suddenly, Lita's eyes widened in disbelief. She heard the terrified screams of everyone. "It's coming back." Everyone there was shocked. They screamed in terror. "The monster is coming back." Something slimy slowly emerged. The monster's tentacle shot up from the water. The tentacle looked like a water snake. Crawling onto the shore, people panicked and fled. Only Lita and her brother were still standing there, dazed. Lita looked straight ahead, her eyes as if hypnotized. Her younger brother's face was no different from hers. Something seemed to have captivated them. Soon after, he snapped out of it, calling softly "sister." The others noticed them and quickly turned back to pull him away. The boy was still puzzled, asking his sister, "Are we all going to die?" Lita stood still as a statue, looking up, her whole body trembling. "Maybe." Then she looked down at her younger brother who was clutching her shirt, reminding herself, but although her eyes were red, Lita's face was brighter than ever. She said firmly, "Don't give up." The tentacle opened wide, its mouth agape, as if to swallow both siblings, but Lita and her brother still stood there, incredibly defiant. Tears were already streaming down her cheeks, but she still shouted loudly, "It's okay, we will survive." The man who was holding his head suddenly froze, looking at her in amazement. Even those who were trying to escape turned their heads to look back. But the tentacle didn't hesitate. It charged straight ahead. It opened its mouth, bit half of Lita's body, and dragged her away. The boy watched his sister fall into danger in shock, only able to scream in despair, "Sister." Her hand gripped the iron bar tightly. Her spirit was something that could not be hidden. Lita used all her strength, swung the iron bar. Fresh blood from the wound on the monster's body splattered everywhere. Lita was breathless, letting the blood splash on her face. Suddenly, the tentacle increased its strength, quickly slamming Lita to the ground. She was pinned down by it, blood pouring from her body again. A few men standing nearby watched the scene in a daze, both scared and angry, but unable to do anything. Then it lifted her whole body up again. Lita's body was now limp. Lita's face was pale, her hair disheveled. She seemed to have no life left in her. Seeing that scene, the man shouted in anger. He used all his strength, attacking the monster. trying to free Lita from its mouth. But because he used too much force, he was thrown a distance away. The monster was angered by his action and immediately charged to attack. At this moment, Gams held a large stone, shouting die. As he finished speaking, the heavy stone slammed straight into the monster's head. It cried out in pain, quickly retracting its head. Gams gritted his teeth and cursed, "Surprise, you monster." The young man standing nearby looked at him in surprise. Gams. Everyone was still frozen, their mouths agape in astonishment. Gams saw their state and shouted angrily, "What are you waiting for? That little girl is fighting." After hearing this, everyone gritted their teeth, their faces full of killing intent. They began to pick up their weapons. The red-haired young man patted the shoulder of the youngest boy in the group, instructing, "Step back, kid, take care of Lita. We're coming back." As soon as he finished speaking, he joined the crowd, moving forward. More and more monsters were appearing. They were large, slimy, almost overwhelming everyone. The boy was terrified, crying his eyes out, but still held Lita tightly. The monsters opened their mouths wide, making terrifying sounds. Everyone looked at the monsters worriedly, but no one backed down. "Maybe today is our last day, but I'll punch you into a hole before I die, you monster." Immediately, the monsters stretched out their bodies, and at a terrifying speed, they attacked everyone. The boy's eyes were squeezed shut, his teeth gritted to avoid making a sound, his heart pounding from the strange noises around him. Inside the pitch-black cellar, something was echoing loudly, making anyone who heard its hair stand on end. The water pipes also began to shake as if haunted. The group fumbled along, looking around in all directions, their heads full of question marks. Are these all great relics? Mao was checking everywhere. There's still a lot of them here. The person next to him urged, "Leave it, Mao. It's all just scrap metal." Soon, the whole group was standing in front of a door. "We're almost there." The heavy cellar door slowly opened, startling the whole group, scaring the daylights out of them. Stepping inside, oh my, the scene was as devastated as if a small Big Bang had just occurred, all scrap metal and some kind of charcoal pillars. Who knows what they were? They passed a tiny, round submarine, rusted like an ancient artifact. Mao made another deadpan comment. "Looks like the submarine that Takis used." At the end of the path, another door swung open. Kana's group had their mouths agape, as dazed as newborn fawns. In front of them was an old man, sitting with his back to them. The screen above him was brightly lit. The old man sat as still as a statue, the air thick with silence. He closed his eyes as if dozing off. After a moment, Kana asked in a daze, "Who is this?" Just then, Tai-sun, with a gun in his hand, had just opened his eyes to look towards the sound. The old man replied calmly, "I am the leader of this shelter, Tai-sun." Tai-sun glanced indifferently at the newly arrived crowd. "Welcome to Matata Shelter. We are the last survivors here." It seemed he was also a little surprised. "You are the first people to come here in a decade." Mao was stunned after hearing this. 100 years. You've lived here for all that time? Tai-sun didn't bother to answer the young man, but turned to Kana and asked directly, "Where are you from? What does the outside world look like now?" Suddenly, he shouted in astonishment, "You're from the surface, aren't you?" The surface has finally returned, hasn't it? Kana asked in a daze. "You mean the mechanical zones?" Hearing the question, Tai-sun suddenly became angry, yelling, "I'm talking about the land where grass and plants grow. I'm asking if the land has returned." Seeing the other's tense attitude, Mao immediately stepped in front of Kana. "What are you talking about? This whole world is just water. Where would you find something called land?" Kana looked at Tai-sun with suspicion. "What is he talking about? It's all water. Even we come from a village made of concrete." Hearing the disappointing answer from the two, Tai-sun's face fell, his despair evident. "It's still." He suddenly collapsed, his eyes sad as he mumbled, "It's still all just ocean." Noah and Lin standing by also felt sorry for him. Seeing the old man's strange behavior, Bota's group looked a little worried. Suddenly, the guild master voiced his suspicion. "Is it possible to live in a submerged place like this?" Sonia suddenly grabbed Noah, her voice full of anxiety. "Hey kid, where's Godi?" As soon as she finished speaking, Lin quickly pulled back a curtain. Inside was Godi lying completely still. He was still unconscious, his face covered in scratches. Sonia rushed to his side, calling out loudly, "Godi." Tai-sun saw this and spoke up to reassure her. "He's still alive, but lost a lot of blood. The wounds aren't too serious, so he'll be fine." Bota smiled, a glimmer of hope in his heart. "So he's okay. I hope Lita is too." But Sonia was as if drowning in a sea of sorrow. She frantically punched Godi's chest, to the point where he coughed up blood, and she didn't even notice. "Wake up, you idiot." But she didn't stop there. She cried while grabbing Godi's hair and pulling him up. "We have to avenge Ziku." Bota, horrified, stopped her. "Sonia." Kana turned to Tai-sun, her gaze determined. "We need you to destroy the monster Zen." He didn't answer, but asked back, "Is that what you call the monster?" Kana immediately became wary. "You know where Zen's nest is, don't you?" Everyone started to focus on the main objective. "Are you planning to kill the sea monster with those buttons?" Tai-sun remained silent, and then said, "I know why you're here." As he finished speaking, he pressed a button on the control panel. Immediately, the screen behind him lit up. You want to save these people, right? Inside, a scene of people waiting appeared, with Lita putting her arm around a young boy. Bota whispered, Lita, that's Lita. The others were equally overjoyed. My God, they're still alive. See, I told you so. On the screen, the image of his sister Lita appeared clearly. Bota was so happy he cried. She's alive. Lita is alive. Thank God I'm not too late. Looking at his sister's sad face, he told himself, hang in there, Lita. I'm coming. Bota quickly turned to ask Tyson, where is it? He still didn't answer, just said with certainty, if you're here to kill the monster, I'll help. Amidst the city's ruins, two lights flickered, not bright, but enough for both sides to see each other. Two figures were busy doing something. While they were working hard, a notification suddenly sounded. Archer is ready. Roger that. Return and wait for Kana's signal. As soon as the notification ended, something whizzed past them. Under the impact of that thing, both of them fell backwards. Trang Su's heart skipped a beat. What was that? Behind a rock where they were hiding, a monster slowly revealed itself. Its whole body was covered in spikes. The thing sticking out of its head was also missing a chunk of flesh. Chains were wrapped tightly around its body. Its sharp teeth looked terrifying. Suddenly, it crawled out of its cave, letting out an earth-shattering roar in the middle of the night. The two, Trang Su, who were hiding, were also deafened by the roar and had to scream. He was both confused and scared. Xenot, what is it doing here? As soon as he finished speaking, Xenot went berserk, tearing at the net. It seemed to have caught the scent of humans, so it turned back to search. Very quickly, it discovered the figures hiding behind the distant rock. It charged at lightning speed. The two men watched the monster charging towards them, frozen. When they came to their senses, they could only scream in despair. Xenot opened its mouth wide as if to swallow them both. The initially dark cellar now had a faint glimmer of light. They went deeper into another path, still dark and gloomy. The pipes were rusty, and there was even a long streak of bright red blood. Tyson led the group across a small bridge connecting two areas. Mao glanced around as he walked, exclaiming, I can't believe something like this exists underwater. Tyson explained sadly, this used to be a land city. He began to sink into memories of the past. When the raindrops began to fall, our ancestors built this place to prepare for the prophecy of a great flood. They built a city on high ground and hoped that it would stop. Amidst the pouring rain, planes continued to transport goods. Tyson explained the cellar's pipe system. This place was built to survive underground even when most of it was submerged. The people back then still lived happily. It was a paradise. We lived with the hope that one day the land would return. But then everything fell apart when a monster attacked. A strange creature appeared. Kana looked at him. Xenot, Tyson's eyes were full of pain, he confirmed. He remembered the horrific battle back then. We tried our best, but it didn't seem to be working. Everyone gritted their teeth and fought to their last breath. All the ammunition got wet. But sadly, in the end, only a pile of white bones remained. They all died for the monster. Then our paradise turned into hell in the blink of an eye, and the path they were walking on was also scattered with skeletons. On the backs of the skeletons, weapons were still slung, as if showing their defiant spirit from the past. They looked up at the things hanging above their heads. We're losing people, the slimy mouths, fresh blood still clinging to them. Looking at the remaining scraps of their comrades' clothes, their hearts grew heavy. They set traps as if they knew we were coming here. Tyson recounted, sweating profusely with fear. We are being hunted by them. He couldn't believe it, turning to ask Kana, are you sure you can kill it? Mao immediately stood up to shield her, asserting, of course, we have Kana. In the machine room, Lin was monitoring them and keeping an eye on Godi. When she saw they had arrived, Lin said, wait a moment for me to open the door. Just a moment later, the door opened and they continued inside. Passing over another bridge, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed. Sonia suddenly stopped, looking down into the deep abyss. Then screamed in fear, I can't see the bottom. Bota seemed impatient. How much longer? We should go faster. Noah slowly pointed forward. Here it is. We'll reach Zen's nest soon. Bota looked in the direction the boy was pointing and was startled. In front of them was a giant mass of something, wrapped in a net, its shape indistinguishable. Bota was skeptical. What is that? When they got closer, they were horrified to realize it was a ship tangled together. Bota was startled and remembered. Isn't that Teiko's? What? The person standing next to Bota quickly moved forward to inspect. When he realized two people were tightly wrapped in the net, he shouted in horror, Trang Su. Many looked at Trang Su's terrified face and became even more confused. What the hell happened? He quickly pulled at the net, saving Min. What happened? But in response to his concern, Min could only utter two words, run away. What? What? At this moment, Kana also sensed that something was wrong. She gritted her teeth, her expression tense. She quickly shouted, "Get back!" But as soon as she finished speaking, Zen appeared right above them. Kana gritted her teeth in worry. Both Bota and Sonia's mouths fell open, dazed. Noah and his grandfather's faces were drained of all color when they saw the monster appear again. A terrifying crash echoed. The bridge they were on immediately broke in two. Everyone fell along with the monster, screams of terror echoing everywhere. Bota held Noah tightly in his arms. Kana was silent, letting herself fall freely. She was the first to fall off the bridge. Then followed a series of other impacts. Zen's massive, heavy body continuously slammed into the iron bridges. It looked like it was clearing a path for everyone, but those lucky enough to be on the edges escaped. Mao worriedly turned his head and called, "Kana, Bota." Unfortunately, they could only see the faint silhouettes of the two and didn't know if they heard anything. Sonia also called out worriedly, "Bota." Tyson's heart was burning with worry for his grandson, Noah. Right at this moment, Sonia felt like something was above her head. She quickly turned her head to look and was horrified to find a mouth full of fangs waiting. But the bad luck didn't stop there. Just a moment later, a dozen other mouths were crawling towards them. The group quickly fled back to the starting point. Get back. The three, Sonia provided cover from behind, running backwards while attacking, hit. The mouths above their heads were quickly shot down. It seemed that action only provoked them further, causing them to attack more ferociously. A scene as horrifying as a horror movie unfolded before everyone's eyes. The terrifying roars mixed with the continuous sound of gunfire, creating a scene of extreme chaos. Despite being hit by bullets continuously, they were as persistent as leeches, not giving up, continuing to attack more brutally. In the bottomless abyss, the figures of Kana, Bota, and Noah had vanished. Luckily, at one end of a bridge, two people were groaning in pain. A voice from the earpiece suddenly came through, "Bota, Bota." At this moment, he also groggily woke up, replying Kana. Bota glanced around, searching. "Where are you, Kana?" The other end of the line replied, "I'm all the way down here." She was a little worried. What happened to the others? Bota looked up. There must be an exit up there. Then he replied through the earpiece, "It's just me and Noah here." Kana quickly replied, a relief. Bota replied worriedly, "On Kana incoming." But Kana cut him off. "Get to Lita first." Her arm was covered in blood, but she still urged Bota, "I'll catch up, go find Lita." Bota hesitated a little, but Kana lost her patience, shouting, "There's no time." Bota had to obey her, all right. He took the hand of his little friend beside him. "Let's go, Noah." The boy seemed to gain strength. "I'll show you the way." Kana pursed her lips, watching them disappear. She looked down coldly. "Like I said, there's no more time." A small figure, but with a towering presence when facing Zen. "Let's end this here." She glared angrily. Zen. Its tentacles quickly wrapped around the bridge. It began to suck the bridge into its body, along with Kana, who was on it. But the iron cable on the bridge snapped. Kana gained momentum and shot forward. She gritted her teeth, hissing each word with fury. "How dare you?" She remembered the warm hug Lita gave her as a child. "Take Lita from me." Remembering the little girl's bright smile. Then remembering how Zen had grabbed Lita, her anger flared even more intensely right in front of me. The more she remembered Lita's smile, the more Kana's anger reached its peak. "My Lita." The weapon in her hand seemed to sense the overwhelming killing intent and even emitted smoke. With a steady step, she gained momentum, jumped high, preparing to launch an attack on Zen from above. Each decisive slash flew, cutting off parts of its body. After beautifully dispatching half of it, she stopped beside it. But very quickly, Kana gained momentum again, continuing her attack. A fatal stab to the top of Zen's head, fresh blood splattering everywhere. Not stopping there, she shouted again to build up her spirit. Kana moved as fast as a small whirlwind. Wherever she went, the wound on Zen's head was gouged deeper. As Kana delivered the final blow, Zen also let out a piercing scream of pain. This time, Zen managed to react. It swung a tentacle towards Kana. Kana crossed her two swords, quickly blocking the blow. She gritted her teeth, her face full of anger. She was in some pain, groaning. Suddenly, Kana's eyes widened in astonishment. The massive monster had appeared right in front of her with lightning speed. It immediately swung a tentacle, shattering the wall in front of her. Kana managed to dodge in time, once again raising her sword high, continuing to charge and attack. She seemed to have become a different person, screaming frantically, "Die already!" Another whirlwind was formed. But this time was different. A part of Zen's body was cut in two. The new wound on top of the old one made it scream in pain, pain, its heavy body falling again into the bottomless pit. Fresh blood poured from its wound. The bridges continued to break under Zen's weight. Its entire massive body, with old and new wounds piled on top of each other, fresh blood flowing everywhere. Even so, it still refused to give up. Its two remaining energy sources trembled as they were raised high. It gathered all its strength to attack Kana. When the energy source hit the bridge, a loud explosion rang out. Kana was also thrown back by the attack, but very quickly, she regained her balance. Kana quickly gained momentum. Rushing forward, she ran while shouting loudly. Her sword lightly sliced through the old iron bridge. Kana fell with a section of the iron bridge. She pursed her lips, her eyes highly focused. Immediately after, Kana swung her sword, slashing the iron bridge section to make it fly faster. The iron bridge section, like a giant weapon, pierced straight through Zen, fresh blood gushing out like a fountain. It let out a piercing scream that echoed throughout the pipes. But Kana was unfazed, continuing to attack its head directly, causing its eyes to roll back, blood spewing from its mouth. Zen's large body seemed to have lost its gravity, falling faster, and below were the broken bridge sections it had caused, waiting. The result was not unexpected. Another bridge section pierced straight through its body. Its whole body trembled violently in pain. Kana coldly stepped on its body. Her eyes were full of hatred, looking at the giant creature like an ant under her foot. Kana coldly commanded, "Shut up." As soon as the words left her mouth, another slash severed Zen's head. The expression on Zen's face as it detached from its body was one of utter horror, as if it couldn't believe it had been destroyed by a single person. Looking down from above, the pungent smell of blood rose from the bottomless pit. This time, Zen was completely still, no longer able to harm anyone. The places it had crashed were splattered with blood, a sight so horrifying it was nauseating. The sound of metal echoed in the dark cellar as Kana slowly climbed up. A moment later, she reached the side of the bridge. Suddenly, a hand reached out, startling her. Godi had woken up at some point and, guided by Lin, appeared right in front of Kana. "Where is everyone?" His face was full of worry, waiting for an answer. In another deep, dark tunnel, the corpses of tentacles lay scattered, covered in blood. The young man with the high bun on the train was still firing continuously. Despite fighting for a long time, the number of these monsters didn't seem to decrease. Their demeanor grew more frantic and ferocious. The shark-like creature also bared its sparse but sharp teeth. But very quickly, it was beaten bloody by the man in the golden armor. Just then, another monster loomed up behind him, opening its mouth to bite his head. But tough luck, its sharp teeth, however sharp, couldn't compete with the hard iron alloy and shattered completely. He smirked, "Not as easy to eat as you thought." With that, he attacked it straight in the throat, causing blood to spray everywhere. Mao fought while shouting a reminder, "We've almost cleared this area." Suddenly, a tentacle wrapped around a man's neck. He was yanked high into the air, leaving everyone unable to react. Seeing the sharp, drooling teeth approaching, he screamed, "Save me!" But tragically, as soon as he finished speaking, he was swallowed whole by the monster. The two people below could only watch, their faces stunned. Mao's eyes widened as he screamed, "Monster!" At the same time, more and more monsters appeared above their heads, as numerous as ants. A moment later, the monsters couldn't bear their own weight and fell, thudding down right in front of Mao. At this moment, the chairman suddenly turned, cursing angrily. "I knew this would happen, you idiots. Do you think you can save them?" Sonia couldn't take it anymore and retorted, "Shut up, you vile old man." She swung her sword past him, causing him to shriek in fear. But in reality, she had just saved his life, cutting down a monster that was about to attack him from behind. Sonia looked at the chairman with disgust. "Stop whining and get out of my way." But he acted ungratefully, running and shouting, "If you want to die, die alone." Sonia angrily called after him, "Old man." Mao also cursed in frustration, "Cowardly bastard." The chairman ran to a door, frantically banging on it and screaming, "Open up, open up." Surprisingly, the door slowly opened. The chairman stared blankly for a moment at the person standing before him. Jocko, with a soulless expression, soaking wet, slowly stepped out. His eyes were dull, his face drenched with water. The chairman was astonished, as if not believing his eyes. Jocko. Hearing this, Sonia and Mao were also startled and turned around. "What? Jocko?" Everyone immediately stopped what they were doing, staring blankly at the person who had just appeared from behind the door. When they clearly saw the familiar face, everyone was surprised. "Jocko." Sonia also couldn't believe it. "Is it really Jocko?" She was so moved she cried, "So you're still alive?" The chairman gritted his teeth, his face full of anger. He rushed forward, pushing Jocko while berating him. "This is all your fault. Zenat attacked the village because of you." The chairman scolded him as if he himself had been the one fighting arduously. "Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused? If only you had gone to find Zenat alone." At this point, he suddenly stopped, looking at Jaco's uncontrollably trembling body. Jaco suddenly groaned, his whole body shaking violently. Immediately after, another, more terrifying face emerged. Jaco's face transformed, as if possessed by something. He immediately lunged forward and bit the neck of the chairman, who was standing closest. But the action was not just a simple bite, as Jaco pinned the chairman to the ground. Sonia and Mao were wide-eyed and open-mouthed, horrified. The other two were no better. The chairman was bitten until he was bleeding profusely, screaming in pain. What's happening to him? Jaco ignored the desperate screams of his former comrade on the ground and frantically mauled him. The chairman struggled in pain, but just a few minutes later, he was no longer moving. The three, Sonia and the others, stood frozen at the horrific sight before them. Jaco. The bloody, brutal scene unfolded right before their eyes. Jaco, his face covered in blood and his teeth stained red, turned to look at them. The chairman lay motionless on the ground, his wide-open eyes still showing a look of terror. Tai-sun trembled at the sight, but still tried to explain he's been infected by Zan. He's not the person you once knew. At this moment, Jaco was slowly advancing towards them. Hearing this, and seeing Jaco's current state, Sonia was heartbroken and burst into tears. No. She recalled his earlier words, "I'm looking for a cure for the hydro plague." With an enthusiastic look, he had extended his hand to her. It will be the cure for children somewhere in the world. His eyes were sincere as he invited her. "Come with me, Sonia." Sonia crossed her arms, a slightly proud look on her face. "Hey, sir, I don't come cheap." Jaco readily agreed. "Godi, and you could take anything we find while diving." Sonia was slightly surprised. "Really?" Jaco clenched the object in his hand decisively. "I'll bet on it," and then threw it toward Sonia. When she opened it, inside was a small, beautiful keychain. Godi was startled. "Hey, Jaco, isn't that your memento for your daughter?" Even Sonia's eyes widened in disbelief. But Jaco just smiled gently. "Let's make a difference together, Sonia." Sonia, of course, didn't refuse, happily replying, "Deal accepted." The stark difference between the Jaco of the past and the present made Sonia's heart ache the more she thought about it. Jaco's steps were unsteady, his body limping, as he moved forward one step at a time. Sonia still didn't want to believe it, still clinging to a sliver of hope. "Jaco, it's me, Sonia. Don't you remember me?" Mao hurriedly tried to stop her. "Get back, Sonia. It's not safe." But Sonia was no longer paying attention to him. "Leave me alone." Sonia cried and screamed. "You said you would find a cure for the children. Wake up, Jaco." Jaco's eyes suddenly froze, and he began to tremble once more, gritting his teeth and groaning. Then he clutched his head, as if in a fierce internal struggle with himself. He began to scream louder, startling everyone with his strange behavior. At this moment, Jaco's eyes began to change, but he still clutched his head, screaming in pain. Finally, his entire body suddenly deformed, and multiple arms sprouted out. He looked incredibly grotesque. His condition now seemed beyond cure. Sonia's jaw dropped in astonishment, but before she could process her shock, Jaco lunged at her. Sonia reflexively raised her hand to defend herself. Jaco's sharp teeth bit down so hard that her hand bled. Sonia screamed in pain. "Jaco." She kept calling his name, hoping he would come to his senses. "Stop it, Jaco." Sonia screamed in pain as a chunk of flesh was bitten off her arm by Jaco. Fortunately, Kana appeared just in time, attacking Jaco head-on. He let out a horrifying, pained shriek. Godi ran over from a distance, his voice full of worry. "Sonia." "Godi." He gritted his teeth in anger. "You monster." Sonia quickly stopped him. "No." Before he could strike, Sonia stood right in front of him. She quickly explained, "That's not a monster, it's Jaco. Jaco Gusto." Hearing this, Godi was stunned. He stared blankly for a moment, looking at the monster before him. The familiar golden hair. Godi still couldn't believe it. "Jaco?" He watched the person in front of him slowly get up. "It's Jaco." Godi was heartbroken, trembling. Why? But before anyone could dwell in their emotions for too long, a cold sword pierced through Jaco's chest, fresh blood spraying everywhere. Sonia's eyes widened in shock, and Godi jumped in fright. Kana seemed not to hear their whispers, coldly pulling out the sword. Then she leaped high, preparing to deliver the next blow. But suddenly Kana's eyes widened, her face full of astonishment. The clang of metal clashing, sparking and startling those around. Godi had quickly appeared, blocking right in front of Jaco. Kana looked at him suspiciously, unable to help but ask, "What are you doing?" Godi didn't look at her, just mumbled, "Damn it, wait a minute." But before he could finish, he took an elbow from Kana. Godi staggered back, clutching his face in pain. Kana once again gathered her strength, preparing to attack Jaco from behind. But her eyes once again showed the same look of surprise as before. Another deafening clash rang out. Sonia had managed to block the second blow. Kana lost all patience and ordered move. Despite being frightened by her gaze, Sonia stood her ground. "No." The sound of weapons clashing echoed continuously as Kana attacked Sonya without hesitation. Even so, she still tried to explain, Kana, that's Jocko. Kana seemed more clear-headed than them. She replied seriously, he's not human anymore, so get out of the way. Hearing this, Sonya became even more furious, crying and denying it. No, you're wrong. With tears streaming down her face, she painfully begged Kana, please, Kana, I'm begging you, don't kill him. At least let him live, even if he's like this. Hearing these words, Kana seemed to soften a little. But Jocko on the other side was not the same. Because he was infected, his eyes were soulless. He then lunged towards Kana and Sonya. Sonya shouted in worry, no, Jocko. Kana's eyes immediately became wary. Before a third person could intervene, Kana quickly slashed Jocko in two. His upper body fell heavily. Sonya was so heartbroken she couldn't stand. She silently remembered the old days. Jocko. She remembered the day the two of them stood on a railing talking. Why do this when it brings no profit? She was curious about his goal. Why do you want to find a cure for the hydro plague? Didn't your daughter make it? Jocko replied in a low voice. When I see her again, I want to look into her eyes. He suddenly turned and smiled gently. I want to tell her that I never stopped thinking about her. And now, the man lying on the ground, in a pool of blood, was that same man. Everyone stood silently around his body, no one saying a word. Finally, it was Godi who spoke first, Jocko. Kana was also silent, looking at the person she had just ended with her own hands. Mao and the other man were also sad, but there was nothing they could do. The others were no exception. Sonya knelt before him. Jocko. She sobbed heartbrokenly, murmuring, I hope you get to see your daughter. Looking at Jocko's gentle face, you can be proud. With that, she cried even harder. Then, using 2 fingers, she gently closed his eyelids. Finally, Jocko closed his eyes and passed away, departing peacefully. Godi couldn't hold back his tears either. Everyone was silent, a heavy atmosphere hanging over them. Tyson suddenly turned to look. He looked at the chairman's corpse lying on the ground. Why? Tyson asked them suspiciously about that person is dead. Only then did everyone realize. Mao spoke for them. He deserved to die like that. Kana turned to remind Sonya, take care of your wound. She added coldly, we're going to Bota and Noah's location. The scene of people lying scattered on a large rock in the middle of the water. Everyone was waiting. A man with his head bowed murmured, I don't want to become a monster. Then he shot to his feet. Better to die than become a monster. He lifted a rock from the ground, then hugged it and jumped into the water to everyone's astonishment. Standing tall in the current, he then submerged himself. Sinking beneath the water, everyone stared in shock at his action. The water's surface began to bubble. He was snatched into the mouth of a giant sea monster. The monster emerged from the water. 2 nearby, townspeople saw the scene and were terrified. There it is. No. They were so scared they scattered in panic. The man in the monster's mouth coughed violently. The beast stared at him, and he turned pale with fear. What do you want? Why don't you just kill me already? He screamed. Just let me die, you damn monster, you damn beast. It flung the man into the air, his face white as a sheet. N.O. From above, Bota swooped down. He used his sword to cut the arm wrapped around the man. Everyone was surprised. The one swooping down was Bota. He grabbed the man's hand. Bota. Everyone looked up toward the monster. It's Bota. Bota isere. On the pipeline, a light flashed this way. Someone was holding a flashlight. Noah appeared. Over here. The people were overjoyed, wading through the dangerous water to reach the light and the person who had saved them. They came to save us. Bota looked at the man. What about Lita? Where's Lita? He asked fearfully. Lita. He bowed his head, not daring to look him in the eye. Bota understood. He was stunned. Inside that sack, Lita was lying still. She was dazed, slowly opening her eyes. Bota was tense. Lita. He rushed to Lita's side. No. Pulling out his knife, he sliced open the sack in front of him. Lita escaped from the membrane of water. He hugged his sister tightly. Lita. The beast appeared right behind him. It used its giant hand to crush Bota. He tried to reach for his sister, but he failed. Bota was pulled up by the beast. Separated from the water sack, she sank back into the membrane. He roared in anger, Lita. The enraged beast stomped him down onto the rock, causing it to crack. Everyone turned to look at the source of the sound. Noah was annoyed. Stupid. I told you not to do it alone. He was pinned by the beast, his hand still trying to grip his sword, clenching the weapon tightly. Bota was furious, his eyes wide. You bastard. He used his sword to push himself up from under the foot pressing on him. The beast watched him trying to get up. Bota remembered the moment with his sister. What kind of bastard? The scene of Bota hugging Lita when they were little. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Did this to you? The sword slashed hard into the beast's body. For my sister. As if filled with new strength, he stood up and hacked off its arms right before its eyes. the severed arms, blood spraying everywhere. He roared in anger, "I'll kill you." Bota charged to face the monster, clinging tightly to its flesh, his eyes filled with hatred. He cut a long gash in its skin. It was an extreme pain, which only spurred him on. The sword cut into its body endlessly. He hated the beast before him, and the beast was terrified. Its eyes were hit by poison arrows red as blood. It nearly collapsed from the pain. Bota pointed his gun at it. "Does it hurt?" This poison was made by the people whose families you stole. It tried to attack him with its hand, but with just a few slashes, its hand was severed. Its face showed a pitiful expression from the painful wound. Bota stared, his voice filled with glee. "That won't work on me." In the workshop, someone yanked a lever on the electrical panel. Sparks flew from the iron bars. The three people in the workshop stared in shock at the scene before them that we've stored almost all the energy. Tyson looked at Mao. "We should use the submarine to evacuate everyone now." Mao immediately replied, "Yes." Then Mao shouted, "Let's get everyone back." Someone reminded him, "Mao, this way." Tyson looked at the object before him. "Is this a bomb?" Kana explained, "It's a sea mine." The sea mine was pulled along. Tyson looked at it, full of worry. If this thing explodes, this whole place will collapse. "This is our last weapon." In the cave, Bota and the beast were staring at each other. Bota faced its gaze, his hand tightening on his sword. "I'm not trembling anymore." He remembered the sea monster from long ago on his family's small boat, how big they used to be. The scene of the boat surrounded by sea monsters, so many, when he was about to be swallowed by the beast and was so scared. He had bowed his head in fear, not like before. Now he still felt scared, but he couldn't back down. "She's there." The scene of Lita trapped in the water sack, his little sister. His eyes became incredibly angry, his rage flaring up. His eyes were bloodshot. He stared at the beast without blinking. "Just because you're big doesn't mean you can scare me." It looked at Bota with its mouth wide open, drool dripping down. "That just means you're an easier target." He held his sword and charged towards it. "I'll kill you and bring Lita back." Its claws also attacked back. He dodged, his voice full of contempt. "Where are you aiming? Is the poison affecting you?" The beast held onto a rock, lifted it, and threw it at him. He was startled. It threw it right where he was standing. Bota jumped up as fast as lightning. Escaping its counterattack from the sword, he pulled a wire, separating the blade from the hilt. The wire and the sword wrapped tightly around the beast's neck. With all his strength, he pulled the wire taut, strangling the beast. He shouted loudly, trying to tighten the wire. Under the pressure, its entire head was severed, its flesh bursting apart. The monster's head fell into the water as everyone watched. From above, Bota swooped down, his sword plunging straight into the beast's fatal weak point. He tried with all his might, the sword stabbing hard, digging deep, down into its flesh, plunging deep inside. He pressed the sword with all his strength. It was an extreme pain, trying to struggle free from the sword piercing deep into its flesh. It let out screams that echoed throughout the cave. Bota was bloodthirsty die. Its flesh swelled, causing the skin on its brain to explode, its brain spilling out. As everyone watched, blood splattered everywhere. Noah was astonished. He defeated that giant thing by himself. The townspeople hugged each other and cheered with joy. "Wow, he defeated the sea monster." A townsperson looked at him. "Bota saved us." He stood on the sea monster's corpse looking at the people. They all looked up at him with joyful eyes. The image of Bota standing on the monster, holding his sister in his arms. The monster's blood splattered everywhere, making the sad scene also have a touch of joy. Bota looked at his sister in his arms. He was sad, his heart aching. "Was I too late?" "I'm sorry." Someone looked at the scene. "Is it too late?" He held the girl on the rock, Lita. His face was wet with tears. "I'm sorry, it's my fault. Please, wake up." He was desperate, Lita. Everyone was sad. Suddenly the water level began to recede. The water is going down. Noah looked at the water. The drainage system is working. They must have gotten the power back on. Someone looked at the defeated monster. The water sacs were gradually breaking open as the arms of the baby monsters pierced through from the inside. Someone said fearfully, "They're hatching." Everyone was worried. Why now? From the large sacs, a series of mini-monsters appeared. The people screamed in fear. Those monsters jumped out of the water sacs and rushed towards them. The newly hatched monsters jumped into the water. They stood up like humans, but moved on all fours. They stared at the people right in front of them. The people were terrified. "Run." Noah saw the scene. "Bota, look behind you. There are a lot of them." Bota looked at his sister, tears still falling. "Lita, she's not breathing anymore." A monster aimed its giant mouth at him. Noah screamed, "Bota." Noah ducked to avoid the monster's gaze. The boy waited, and when nothing happened, he peeked at the monsters. The boy was stunned, looking at them with astonished eyes. Why aren't they moving anymore? Noah wondered, looking around. He saw Lita's hand raised towards the ferocious beasts. Bota was shocked. "Lita." The girl stood up, raising her hand towards the monsters. Bota and Noah were both surprised. The beast stood still, not moving at all. Kana saw the entrance ahead. Almost there, Kana was extremely worried. Bota, Lita, they passed through the cave entrance. Kana was speechless when she saw Lita standing before a horde of beasts. The girl stood motionless, her eyes blood red, her face covered in green veins. Kana couldn't believe what she was seeing Lita, but the girl didn't respond, just continued to stand there. Kana was stunned, her heart full of anxiety. Lita. At this moment, Mao was carefully observing the monsters. Seeing them standing motionless, he wondered, what's going on? Bota approached the girl, gently asking, Lita, are you okay? But still, he received no reaction. He grew more worried, stammering her name, Lita. Then he placed his hand on her shoulder. Suddenly, her whole body went limp and she collapsed into Bota's arms. He was shocked as he caught her. A moment later, they had brought Lita onto a flying ship. It slowly took off. Inside the cabin, the air was strangely silent. Bota still sat there, holding his sister. Suddenly, green veins appeared on her face. He felt bewildered. The green veins became more and more numerous. Bota was helpless, holding Lita tightly. He whispered, let's go home. Let's go home, Lita. Seeing this, everyone felt uneasy, especially Godi. He looked at the girl. Trembling, he swallowed, his hand tightening on his gun. These actions did not escape Sonia's notice. She remained silent, quietly thinking. Jocko became a monster in the end. Will this girl be any different? At this moment, Lita was still lying quietly in Bota's arms. Kana watched them silently, her gaze deep, her mind in turmoil. She looks like Jocko when he transformed. Lita might be infected too. It's hard to imagine what happened before. They returned to the flying ship's starting point. Mao announced, this is the last one, and told an old man to get on board quickly. However, the old man said he wouldn't go, leaving him stunned. Noah and Lin worriedly called out to him, but the old man had closed the ship's door, just watching the two children through the glass. He confessed that he was too old to get used to a new life. Then he instructed, you children must live, you hear? With that, he decisively pressed the start button. The ship slowly moved, leaving this place. It sped through the pipeline, then flew outside. The two children sobbed uncontrollably. Now, only the old man remained. He pulled out a gun hidden in his coat and said mysteriously, one day you'll understand. This place is everything to him. The children should go somewhere better than this. The two girls trembled, huddled in a corner. The ship gradually emerged from the water. The shaking inside grew stronger. After waiting for a long time, the two looked up. The ship's hatch was now slowly opening. The daylight shone in, blinding the two girls. Noah, Lin, the last children of the underground city of Mutata. They curiously looked outside, then climbed out of the ship. Gazing at the vast sky, don't be afraid. Life continues in a world with new people. Watching the birds fly freely in the sky, Noah suddenly burst into tears, calling out, Grandpa, it's the sky, it's endless. Seeing this, Lin also cried. The sun was gradually setting. Meanwhile, the world underground sank into darkness. Down there, only ruins and rubble remained. The old man pulled out a machine, placing it among the monsters. He was emotional. Comrades, brothers, friends, and my child, even my wife, have all left this world. He hated the monsters that had taken their lives. As he spoke, he activated the machine that he never forgot it for a second his whole life, the hatred for them. The only reason his heart still beats is for this moment. With that, the old man pulled the cord hard, his eyes wide. This is for everyone. Die in hell. The machine started to work, spraying a flammable gas. The gas spread throughout the space, then slammed into a monster. Then, a terrifying explosion rang out. The explosion destroyed everything in its path. Everything seemed about to turn to dust. The fire burned the dome of the underground city. Seawater began to flood in. Then, the current grew stronger, extinguishing the fire, but also submerging everything. The water rose like a flood, sweeping away everything. Containers and electrical wires were sucked into the pipeline one by one. The place turned into a giant black hole at the bottom of the ocean. Everything was pulled inside. On the surface, the scene was much more peaceful. Someone shouted, "Look!" Everyone turned around. Everyone was astonished. It's the rescue team. They're back. The townspeople cheered joyfully. Kana, mount. He eagerly announced to them that Zen was dead. This place is safe now. After hearing this news, the people became even more joyful. Some were still stunned, not believing what they had just heard. Then, they were reunited with their relatives who had been captured before. The moments of reunion were truly touching. A couple hugged each other tightly, crying after so many days apart. Everyone was emotional, wanted to hold their loved ones tight. Kana quietly watched this sacred reunion scene, a faint smile on her face. At this moment, Bota returned carrying his sister, his face downcast and pale. Someone asked, "Is she okay?" He replied that she was just sleeping. Then, he quietly carried Lita away. People began to whisper among themselves. The fact that the girl showed signs of being infected couldn't be hidden for long. Sonia asked Kana, "What are you going to do?" "The rumors will spread quickly. You saw Jocko. This whole place is in danger. Lita will destroy this entire area." She showed no reaction, just replied faintly, "Really?" At that moment, there was a strange noise from the water, attracting everyone's attention. Someone shouted, "Look!" They were all astonished. It was a container from the underground city floating to the surface. Following that, a few more also surfaced. The people cheered. "The great relics. This is amazing." Sonia was so astonished she exclaimed, "Impossible." Suddenly Kana said, "I don't think she will destroy this place." Then she asked her, "You saw what happened, didn't you?" "They escaped thanks to Lita." Kana's gaze became deep. She was referring to Bota and his sister. Those children could be the key. Hearing this, Sonia fell silent. The sky began to grow dark. At this time, a comrade spoke up, "Thank you, Kana. If you weren't here, we wouldn't have stood a chance." She replied faintly, "It was a team effort." The others also chimed in, "Thank you, Kana. Thank you so much." Mao spoke up, "Everyone is grateful to you. You don't have to be so modest. You're a hero, Kana." Then he asked quietly, "How is Lita?" She replied, "She's still sleeping, just like a newborn baby." At that moment, Lita was curled up on the bed. Both her hands were curled up too. She was breathing heavily, looking very uncomfortable. Godi said, "I hope she can wake up and be a normal person again." Mao asked, "What are you talking about?" He replied, "What if she becomes a monster like Jocko?" She was trapped in an egg sac just like that. Sonia said that was just a pipe dream, that a monster is a monster. While they were arguing, Kana just remained silent, lost in thought. Mao wanted to clarify that Kana had no choice but to kill Jocko. She said that's what she was talking about. Then, she slammed her hand on the table and asked Kana what she would do when Lita becomes a monster. "Could you kill her?" Kana's eyes widened, but she remained silent. Meanwhile, Lita was still in a coma, showing no signs of waking up. Bota sat silently in a corner, looking as if he was planning something. By now, it was completely dark outside. In Bota's nightmare, he saw himself standing on a familiar boat. He tried to call for Lita, then suddenly saw her huddled in a corner of the boat. Lita was sobbing. He continued to call out worriedly. She asked back, "Didn't you say you would never leave me?" Bota's eyes filled with tears. He hugged his sister tightly, apologizing, "I will never leave you alone again." Suddenly, she squeezed his arm tightly, her face ashen, reproaching, "I told you not to leave me." At that moment, Lita had turned into a monster. She lunged and bit Bota's neck hard. He screamed, then woke up from the nightmare. He covered his face, breathless. Was it just a dream? What happened? Then Bota turned to look at his sister. She was sitting on the bed. It was midnight, but many rooms in the base were still lit. Kana was walking alone, lost in thought. If Lita becomes a monster, would I dare to lay a hand on her with these very hands? Kana suddenly clenched her fists, then decided to go to the siblings' room. When she entered, the scene before her left her stunned. Inside were Bota and Lita sitting at the dining table. The scene as peaceful as any other day. The girl still called Kana's name and even gave her a bright smile. Suddenly, the girl rushed over and hugged Kana tightly. Lita emotionally asked, "I made you worry, didn't I?" Kana was stunned for a moment, then hugged Lita back tightly. She said, "Thank goodness. Lita is back." After that, the three of them sat down at the table together. The girl slowly recounted that after being trapped in the egg, everything around her began to fade. It kept getting darker and darker until she forgot who she was. At that moment, she heard someone calling Lita, but she no longer remembered who Lita was. Then she felt a warm embrace holding her and saying her name was Lita. Bota was stunned. Lita smiled and continued, saying she had never seen her mother's face, but the feeling was so familiar. Like Mom was protecting me. Even when she died, it was because of me. Although Bota tried to comfort her, Lita couldn't stop thinking, but Mom passed away right after giving birth to me. Then, Lita ate a piece of fish. She praised, "This mackerel is delicious." Kana said the restaurant owner had specially made it for her. Lita smiled brightly. "I'm so glad to eat his cooking again." Kana smiled along, while Bota thought happily, "It's still her, just like before." He silently thanked God. However, a moment later, Lita violently vomited all the food out. She covered her mouth, her face bewildered, not understanding what was happening to her. Why does the food smell so disgusting? Then she cried out, clutching her stomach, "I'm so hungry." Suddenly, she saw some fish swimming freely in the water. Lita suddenly snatched one and ate it raw, devouring it greedily. After eating, she was surprised, wondering why she could eat that. A certain scent wafted by. Lita wondered, what does that smell? It's not fish. Looking towards the residential area ahead, she unconsciously headed in that direction. Her body no longer walked on two legs, but switched to running on all fours. Lita now looked like a true predator. Her eyes were wide, her mind in chaos. What is this smell? This sweet scent. Unable to resist, she couldn't stop herself from indulging in it. Thinking thinking she had to chew and swallow it. Its smell is so tempting. After that, she went to the place with the corpses. Fresh blood flowed everywhere, staining the entire area red. Suddenly, she seemed to snap out of it. All these corpses. There's so much blood. Is this that smell? Lita felt scared of herself. Was she attracted to human blood? Then the question echoed in her head. Why? Why is this smell so appealing? Lita slowly approached a corpse. At this point, her mind was no longer normal. Why can't I control myself? Just then, a man appeared, brutally kicking Lita in the stomach. Then he stepped on her and said, "Why is a brat like you awake at this hour?" When Lita sat up, the man pressed a knife to her throat, then suddenly realized. Lita was the girl who worked at the restaurant, the one who had dirted his shoes before. The subordinate behind him asked if they should kill her, but the man said, "Don't be so rough. It's because you act like that people call us pirates." The subordinate argued back, "But we are pirates." Hearing this, Lita trembled in fear, the thought flashing through her mind. Did they kill all the guards for the great relics? Then, she desperately struggled, crying for help. However, she was immediately silenced by the pirate, who threatened, "Shut up or I'll kill you." Lita bit down hard on his hand. The pirate cried out in pain, clutching his arm. When he looked at the wound, he discovered a chunk of flesh was missing. He was furious. He grabbed Lita, about to deal with her, when he noticed she had suddenly stopped resisting. Her eyes suddenly opened wide, and she greedily licked the blood on her lips. The man choked Lita and said, "So you were infected by the sea monster." Then he asked her, "Want more?" and let the blood from his wound drip down. The strong smell of blood seemed to awaken a deep instinct within her. Lita was bewildered, wondering why she couldn't stop herself. But she didn't stay lucid for long. She fell back into a frenzied state. The pirate saw this and laughed perversely. A subordinate reminded him, "We don't have much time," but was yelled at, "Shut up." Suddenly, at that moment, a fist flew out of nowhere. It struck the man's head with a loud thud. The subordinates carrying the great relic ran away. They were horrified to see their leader's head floating on the water. They quickly pulled out their guns and fired continuously at Lita, but Lita nimbly dodged all the bullets. She leaped high into the air, then swooped down to attack them. One pirate dodged and immediately turned to fire, only to be ferociously bitten and torn apart by her. Finished, Lita turned to look at the last pirate with blood-red eyes. The masked man trembled in fear, clutching the hilt of his knife, pointing it at Lita. "Stay away from me." He swung his knife wildly. "I said stay away from me, you freak." Lita's shoulders slumped. Her head bowed to the ground. Then she shot out her hand, grabbing his knife-wielding wrist, squeezing it tight and bending it backwards. The masked man screamed in pain and fell to his knees. Lita's eyes narrowed dreamily. Her lips pursed, whispering, "Hungry, so hungry." The masked man squeezed one. "I shut in pain, I want." The corners of Lita's mouth tore open. She bared her sharp teeth to eat him. Her lips were smeared with blood. Lita lunged, wanting to tear the masked man apart, causing him to scream in terror. No. A group of people ran over, shining their flashlights on Lita and the man. "Someone's there." The masked man was pinned to the ground by Lita. He turned his head in terror. Seeing people arrive, he screamed, his eyes wide and bloodshot. "She's a sea demon." The three burly men who had just arrived saw this and immediately opened fire on the girl. "What? A sea demon?" Two men in the group were stunned. Mao also stared wide-eyed. Lita gritted her teeth, raising her hand to shield her eyes. Mao and the others were astonished, shouting, "Lita, huh?" Taking advantage of her distraction, the masked man raised his knife. The sharp dagger plunged hard into her shoulder. The wound from the dagger sprayed blood everywhere. The flesh exposed. The dagger was not removed. From the wound, the flesh began to swell. The excess flesh grew larger and larger, causing the girl to scream in agony. The man with the wire-like beard standing nearby was slightly bewildered. "What is that?" Mao shouted her name loudly, "Lita." The masked man from before hurriedly ran towards his comrades, breathless, his tone urgent. "Shoot it." A hand reached out to stop them. "Don't shoot." Sonia stepped forward, drawing the sword from her back. "I'll handle this." "Sonia." She smirked. Lita's eyes gleamed, her teeth clenched. Sonia gripped her oversized sword tightly. Facing Lita, "There are no more obstacles within me." Raising the sword to her chest, her voice was calm. "I'm going to make this as painful as possible for you." Lita's face was pale, growling, and she charged straight at Sonia. Sonia quickly swung her sword at the girl. Being hit sent Lita sprawling in pain, but she quickly got back up, crawling in the puddle of water. her eyes wide. Seeing Lita struggling, Sonia frowned. Stay still. You're only making things worse. She frowned, her gaze dropping. I have no other choice. Lita's vision was completely dark, her eyes glowing red. That you're not human. She charged forcefully at Lita. I'll make this quick. Lita. A strong hand blocked Sonia's path. Bota stood firmly between Sonia and Lita. She grabbed his shirt. It's too late, Bota. That's not your sister anymore. Bota said softly, Lita, you can hear me, right? I know you can hear me. Lita frowned slightly, her teeth clenched, her eyes flashing with ferocity. She bared her teeth and pounced on Bota. Sonia was terrified, shouting, Bota, move. But he paid no attention, still focused on his sister. The girl lunged at him, and he immediately hugged her tightly. Being held so tightly made her scream and struggle. Bota spoke gently in her ear. It's okay, Lita. I'm here. Lita wrapped her arms tightly around his waist and bit down hard on Bota's shoulder. Her bite drew dark red blood. Sonia's eyes widened. Bota. The others also shouted his name in alarm. Bota. Bota smiled gently, hugging her even tighter. It's okay, Lita. He gently pulled the knife from his shoulder. I won't leave you alone. Throwing the bloody knife to the ground, he reassured her, we're siblings, after all. He lowered his eyes. I'm here for you, then held her tightly. He said gently, come back and be my little sister. Lita's eyes were empty. She heard someone calling her name, Lita. Lita seemed lost in a dark void. She could still hear someone calling her name, Lita. Little Lita seemed to be submerged underwater. She curled up, hugging her legs. Lita. Her head was spinning. What voice was echoing her name? Her eyes were half closed. Lita. Who is that? She tried to frown. Lita is... Then boom, a slow-motion film played her head. A warm little family of 4. The little girl cherished like a fragile egg. A smile as bright as a K-pop idol's. Then another scene appeared. A kind middle-aged man patting Bota and the little girl on the head. Indeed, from a young age, Bota had protected this little princess. Memories flashed by quickly. The little girl from back then was now grown up, as radiant and beautiful as a beauty queen. The scene changed again. The girl was now protecting another, smaller child from a ferocious sea monster. Though scared to death, her eyes filled with tears, she still managed a gentle smile for her little brother. Lita mumbled in her head again, Lita is... Her eyes were half closed. Then they flew wide open. It's me. The lump of flesh on Lita's shoulder twitched slightly. Then it slowly deflated. Sonia shouted, it's shrinking. Mao, and the group stood frozen, as if in disbelief. Tears streamed down her face. Lita bit her lip, then burst into sobs. Resting her head on Bota's shoulder, her body trembled, crying silently, I'm sorry, big brother. I think something's wrong with me. Her heart ached, remembering her childhood, blaming herself. Someone like me shouldn't have been born. The image of her father hugging her mother, sobbing as she passed away, returned, tormenting her even more. If it wasn't for me, Mom wouldn't have died. Her father had cried so much then. Dad. Then the scene of Bota sitting huddled in a corner also broke her heart. And big brother, always missing Mom so much. She still remembered vividly the moment the 3 of them played in the water. I love you, Dad and big brother, so much, and I feel guilty about it. Lita tried hard to help everyone hang the laundry, because I want to be a better version of myself. Lita wouldn't shy away from chores. She just wanted to be a girl loved by everyone. However, the image of herself with a face full of green veins, dark eyes, and blood-smeared lips terrified her. But now I've become this. What should I do now? The more she spoke, the louder she cried. I'm a monster. Bota frowned, then gritted his teeth, stroking his little sister's head. No, you're not a monster. He held her tightly. You are and always will be my sister, Lita. Kana stood there, witnessing the siblings' heartfelt embrace. Her gaze fell. I can't do it. The sword in her hand went limp. I can't kill Lita, even if she is a demon. Watching Lita sob in Bota's arms, her heart was in turmoil. Is there no way for her to always stay in human form? Kana pursed her lips. The only way to save Lita. Then she thought of the old doctor's smirk. I have to find Dr. Feuder of the Busan United Association. Maybe he has a cure for Lita. Kana lowered her gaze, the image of the association's fortress looming in her mind. That image grew clearer and clearer, like a confirmation that we have to go back to the Busan Association. As dawn broke over the small city on the old ship, people had already gathered at the port. Kana, are you really leaving? Mao's face was frantic. Don't go. We need a leader. Sweat beaded on the young man's forehead. You're the only one who can lead this oasis port. Hearing this, the crowd chimed in. Lead us, Kana. The entire population of the oasis spoke in unison. What will we do without you? Don't go, Kana. Kana pursed her lips, maintaining a calm expression like a refrigerator point. One person leaving won't change this place. Mao's face wrinkled, his eyes trembling, but Kana. The girl looked back, bewildered. The young man awkwardly recalled the time they were all chased by Zenot. There were many leaders during the battle with Hino when it attacked the village. At that time, Mao and everyone else were also eager to fight, enthusiastically participating. That battle left everyone in need, having to share every spoonful of soup, every bite of food, and support each other. Everyone looked at Kana. There have been many talented leaders here already. He called her name tremblingly, Kana. An uncle with a bushy beard stepped forward, his eyes crinkling as he smiled at her. "We brought some medicine and equipment from the relics onto the ship for you." The uncle lowered his voice to speak to Kana, Lita, and Bota. "Thank you for protecting this village, Kana. And you too, Bota." Everyone looked at the three of them with affectionate eyes. "That we will build this village with our own hands. Come back here whenever you want. There will always be a place for you." Bota was so moved his eyebrows shot up. "Thank you, everyone." Two small kids scampered over to Lita. "Lita, is that you?" The little boy pushed a small, beautiful bouquet of flowers into her hand. "Thank you for saving us." The moment the two children were sent flying flashed back in Lita's mind. They're safe, after all. From the crowd, a woman rushed out, crying, "My children!" She hurriedly hugged her two children. "Come here." Then she looked at Lita with a fearful gaze. The little girl could only lower her head, mumbling in her throat. The mustachioed uncle, helpless, comforted Lita. "It's because they don't understand. Don't mind them, child." "Uncle." The uncle looked at Lita, smiling gently. "I can tell that a kind and hard-working girl is standing before me." He gave Lita a few words of advice, and the girl nodded obediently. "So get well and come back, okay?" Sonia spoke up, drawing everyone's attention. "That's enough goodbyes." She put on a sassy air. "Shouldn't we be leaving now?" Kana ran up to Sonia, being as polite as possible. "Thank you for letting us come with you." "It's nothing." Sonia narrowed her eyes. "I don't have a reason to go there either." The man sobbed quietly, Kana. He buried his head in the mustachioed uncle's shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. The ship carrying them slowly left the dock. Kana stood on the deck, looking back at everyone. Lita and Bota also looked on sadly as the villagers grew more distant. The people continued to wave goodbye, goodbye everyone, until the small island gradually disappeared from view. Goodbye, Oasis Port. Their small boat glided across the vast sea. Gante turned to Sonia, who was steering confidently. "Why are you so kind to them?" Sonia tilted her head up to the sky, looking chic. "It's not like I have nothing better to do." She narrowed her eyes. "I'm just going along to see what happens." The image of Lita's terrifying transformation flashed back in her mind. Lita was infected and then turned back into a human. Then the scene of the little girl crying a river of tears. I think she might be the key to finding a cure for the hydroplague. A hand reached out. "I want to find a cure for the hydroplague." Jocko extended his hand towards her. "Surely, somewhere in the world, there must be a way to cure the children." He smiled gently. "Let's do something meaningful with our lives, Sonia." She slowly closed her eyes. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. Sonia looked at Gong Tae, her eyes half closed, a faint smile on her lips. "I want to finish what Jocko started." The man squinted at her with a thoughtful expression, then bowed his head and chuckled softly. "Jocko would be proud of you, Sonia." Suddenly, a bell rang loudly, and a door burst open. Sonia grimaced at the little girl, while Kia looked surprised. "This is the control room." Sonia let out a sigh. "Why did you bring these kids along? Can we see the circuit board?" Gong Tae laughed helplessly. "Come on, they saved us, and they said they wanted to see the world." Sonia gritted her teeth, her eyes narrowed. "What are you, their father?" Gong Tae's face turned beet red as he laughed awkwardly. "You think so?" With that, he hugged the two children. Kids, you're not allowed to break the ship." Sonia turned her face away, looking out at the sea. "Anyway, how are we supposed to find the Busan Association in the middle of this vast ocean?" Kana, who had entered the room at some point, spoke up. "The Busan Association always comes to the trading port at this time to exchange goods." She tapped twice on the table next to the steering wheel. "The coordinates of the trading port are..." Sonia slapped her hand away, grimacing as if to say, "I already know." "I'm sure you know this." Leaning close to Kana's face, Sonia gritted her teeth. "But I am the captain of this ship, Kana." "Of course." They both cleared their throats. Ahem. Sonia sighed. "Fine, I'll allow you to enter the coordinates." Seeing Sonia's expression, Kana narrowed her eyes and smiled slyly. Then she started a conversation. "I know you're a good person, Sonia." Sonia pouted, feigning indifference. Gante looked at her and smiled gently. Outside, Lita was enjoying the sea breeze with Kia and Lin. Her eyes sparkled, her smile radiant. Bota looked at his little sister, his heart filled with a strange warmth, and smiled gently. He remembered how she had cried her eyes out last night. "Lita," he became even more determined. "I will save you, no matter what happens. The image of the Alliance fortress appeared in his mind again, and no matter where we have to go or what it takes. The sea waves churned, and a fortress slowly emerged. Then 2 towering fortresses connected by a precarious rope bridge. This was the trading port. 5 imposing fortresses stood close together, linked by rope bridges. This place was once a massive organization with 5 buildings in the middle of the ocean. But now, alas, only 2 remained, surrounded by desolate ruins after the other 3 were wiped out by a storm. Their revenue also plummeted. A giant ship was approaching, but this place was still an important trading hub. The bow of the ship cut through the waves, and a shout rang out. It's the Busan Association. The massive fortress appeared. The Busan Association had docked at the trading port. The giant Busan ship slowly came to a stop. A person on the ship shouted, "I have an engine." "Buy an engine. Right here, hunters." Other merchants also started hawking their goods. "Dried fish here. I'm selling clothes." People hurriedly transferred goods from the ship to the port. "We don't need fish, only let the clothes sellers on." The old doctor stood on high, gazing down at the crowd below. The doctor took off his glasses, looking around. "Dr. Feuder." A voice called out to him. "Dr. Feuder." A man with a cheerful face appeared. "We brought the fish you ordered." Dr. Feuder was overjoyed to see him. "Finally, you've arrived. Hurry up and let them in. Let them on the ship." A group of people used carts to move goods onto the ship. This action infuriated the others. "You said you didn't need fish, so why are you letting them in?" A soldier in uniform with a fierce face swung his gun, hitting the man who had just shouted, "Get out of the way." The poor man fell to the ground, pulling the tarp off the cart with him. He scrambled up, holding his stinging cheek. On the cart, 4 containers were revealed. Inside each container was a huge eye, a massive heart. The sight horrified the crowd. "What is that?" The soldier snapped, "Get on quickly." "Yes." The merchant grinned at Dr. Feuder. "Are they fresh?" Dr. Feuder, leaning against the containers. He laughed with delight. "They're all fresh. Look, it's still beating." Good, good. Dr. Feuder smiled knowingly. "You did well. Bring me the rest as soon as possible." Turning to the people behind him, he ordered, "Take them to my laboratory." Yes, the colossal Busan fortress, with its intricate system of machinery and pipes. In a room with a radiation warning sign, several men in protective suits were busy with the machinery. They continuously updated the situation. Tank pressure stable. Heart rate stable. The container with the heart was placed on a giant machine, which then began to transfer food into it. The machine sucked in the container, and it was pulled along a pipe. Each part was transferred into a large water tank. A grotesque monster lunged towards them. It bared its sharp teeth, snatching the food that had just been dropped. The large machine let out a roar, startling the men in protective suits. One man peered through a round window. "It's eating. Dr. Feuder, it's eating. It has started to eat on its own." Dr. Feuder also looked, his eyes wide, muttering to himself, "We've finally done it." The monster devoured the food. The egg-shaped machine whirred a few more times. The ship sped across the sea, leaving a trail of rising and falling foam in its wake. 3 men sat on the ship. One gazed into the distance and wondered, what the hell are they going to do with all those monster organs? The oddest one in the group, sitting next to him, replied, "Who cares? As long as we get paid." A dangerous glint appeared in another's eyes as he spoke up. "They're trading gas for monster organs we can't even eat. We have to squeeze as much money out of them as possible." The ship continued its journey, heading towards 2 towers floating in the middle of the sea. As they got closer, they saw, my God, they weren't alone. The surrounding sea was teeming with boats. An old suspension bridge stretched across, with time-worn buildings above. Inside, people were still bustling about. A small boat approached the bridge where people were crossing. A voice shouted, "The Busan Association just ordered some clothes. Bring everything we have." In another corner, the carcass of a grotesque fish was hanging, with several people trying to gut it. The monster's eyes were still wide open, as if it were alive, staring at the person trying to gouge them out. A mess of organs was scattered on the floor, covered in blood. A man standing on the railing looked down at the boat and shouted, "Hurry up, we have to go back one more time before sunset." The people below obeyed immediately, shouting in unison, "Yes." Suddenly, the man was stopped. A voice said, "Long time no see." Bota and Kana stood opposite him, their faces tense. Kana's right eye showed a look of weariness as she glanced in his direction and said, "How long has it been?" 6 years. As soon as Clark Miller saw her, his face turned pale with fear, and he stammered, "Kana." Flocks of birds circled the tops of the 2 towers, where people were still hard at work. The ship slowly approached, seen through binoculars. A voice said, "They said they'll be leaving in 3 weeks." Clark Miller sat cross-legged, watching Kana observe, then sighed wearily. "I heard you caused trouble with the Busan Council. I thought you were dead, Kana." Kana suddenly turned around and made an offer. We need your help to get into the Busan Association. Hearing this, he flew into a rage and snapped back. Why should I help you? Do you know how hard I had to run after leaving Tion? I should have just sided with the Busan Association. Kana lowered her head, her sharp gaze fixed on him, her eyes emotionless. All debts must be paid. Isn't that the rule of the trading port? Clark Miller leaned close to Kana's face, his voice filled with anger. I don't owe you anything. Tion was the one who saved me. She was not one to back down, retorting bluntly, yes, it's true he saved you. Just then, Bota walked in and threw off his hood, leaving the man stunned. Bota's face was revealed, shining brightly in the sunlight. Clark Miller's jaw dropped in astonishment, and he stammered, Tion. But Bota's eyes widened in denial, and he introduced himself. I'm his son, Bota. The man's face looked terrified now. He glanced at Bota and became even more scared when he heard him say, this is your chance to repay your debt. The boat continued its journey across the open sea, cutting through the water and creating churning waves. Clark Miller clutched his head in agony, muttering curses. Damn it. Bota glanced somewhere, cleared his throat, and said, just endure it a little longer, Lita. Lita sat next to some disgusting-looking specimens, so scared she was curled up in a ball, biting her lip tightly. Clark Miller looked curiously at Kana, who was still completely covered, and asked, why are you trying to go back when you could live a normal life and avoid them? Both Bota and Kana glanced at him as he explained, if we get caught, we'll all die. Kana lowered her eyes, hiding her emotions, her voice sad that I know. The ship seemed to be approaching some kind of base. A voice from inside called out, we're almost there. Get ready. The ship docked gently, and everyone stood up to disembark. A faded sign came into view, their destination. They both looked up in amazement, marveling at the sight. Bota glanced at the scene before him, a distant thought flashing through his mind. The Busan Association, after 4 years. The ship approached the giant warship. A voice from it shouted, more stuff for Dr. Feuder here. Bota looked up in horror, his face tense. On the ship, 3 men in uniform stood, looking at something. The man with a stone-cold face looked down from above, his eyes devoid of emotion. Bota looked at him and gritted his teeth in anger, shouting, Dohu! The ship's hull suddenly shook violently. Kana quickly pushed Bota's head down, trying to hold him back. Through her mask, her cold eyes glanced into the distance as she said, stay quiet. Dohu's eyes widened as if they were about to pop out, not understanding what he had seen. Elsewhere, Lita cowered even more in fear. On the eaves, something was falling like rain. The lights on the ship were bright, and then a loud noise suddenly echoed. A group of men were strenuously moving heavy crates. The commander in uniform shouted, the sun is almost down. Move the goods faster. The people here looked terrified. They mumbled in response, yes, sir. 2 familiar figures pushed a crate together, quietly passing the commander. They both kept their heads down, focusing on pushing the crate like true slaves. Kana's eyes looked up, furtively observing her surroundings. Under the brim of his cap, Bota also carefully assessed the situation. Sonia was no better, her face visibly tense. In stark contrast, Lita's face was pale with fear, her expression one of extreme anxiety. Just when they thought they had gotten past the commander, he suddenly shouted, hey, stop right there. Lita's face in the crate turned ashen with terror. She trembled as she heard him yell, we have to check if the quantity is correct. Then suddenly, Kana was pushed hard by a hand. The person shouted, get out of the way. Lita, in the crate, was breathless with fear. She thought with difficulty, oh no, we're going to be discovered. Kana, Bota. A hand lifted the tarp from above. This moment was like Judgment Day for the whole group. Clark Miller gritted his teeth, his voice a worried whisper. If we're discovered, they'll kill us all on the spot. Through a small gap, Lita's terrified face looked out, thinking to herself, it's over. The man lifted the tarp and looked inside. Lita was cowering in a corner. When he saw everything clearly, his face showed surprise. A soft light shone on Lita. The little girl stared blankly at the stranger before her. A moment later, her eyes filled with tears, not knowing what was about to happen. The man's hand slowly lowered, and the tarp covered everything again. The man forced a smile, patted the crate lightly, and turned to the commander. It's all here. Only after receiving confirmation from Mr. Kehoe did he turn away, his voice icy. Move on. Hearing his confirmation, Kana's group continued their task. As they passed Mr. Kehoe, Kana didn't forget to turn back and nod in thanks. Bota did the same, turning to look at Mr. Kehoe with a slight smile, a wordless thank you. Seeing the 2 children safely inside, Mr. Kehoe watched them with a lingering gaze. In his heart, he thought of the image of the little girl in the red cloak, Kana, then of the boy in the green hood, and of Tion's children. His eyes shone with an indescribable joy. They returned to the Busan Association. The sky began to take on the colors of sunset. The sun slowly set, its weak light fading in the west of the association. Inside, Kana's group was exploring. Looking at the vast space, Sonia couldn't help but exclaim exclaim in amazement, "Wow, so this is the famous Busan Association." Hearing Sonia's exclamation and seeing Bota also looking around in a daze, he too couldn't help but be surprised. The ceiling looks much higher than before. Not just the ceiling, but as he looked around, he had to marvel at the changes. These corridors also seemed narrower. Lost in his observations, he suddenly flinched, his eyes widening as if he had just realized something. That's right, he had seen someone he knew, Uncle He. As soon as he saw him, Bota was surprised and overjoyed. Wow, he hasn't changed a bit. While walking, Uncle He seemed to see someone and stopped short at him. Then he quickly passed Bota and ran up to Mr. Kehoe to ask, "Hey, are you about to leave, Kehoe?" Seeing Uncle He ask him, Kehoe could only reply blankly, "Yeah." Seeing Uncle He walk past him, Bota's face showed clear astonishment that he didn't recognize me. Looking at Uncle He chatting happily, he thought to himself, they're all living well, and smiled in relief. Thank goodness. After talking with Uncle He, Kehoe sighed and instructed the children, "We might run into more people who know you. Let's go to the market alley." Hearing him say to go to the market alley, Sonia asked blankly, "Market alley?" Only Lita cheerfully turned to ask Bota, "Bota, do you think the grilled fish stall I like is still there?" Hearing her question, Bota just gently stroked her head. "I'm sure it is." The group then followed Mr. Kehoe to a rusty iron door. Mr. Kehoe turned to look at the children that were here. This way. After passing through the iron door, Bota's group stood in a corridor, their eyes darting around. As if he had just discovered something, he was stunned with surprise. Before him was a deep, dark, and dilapidated alley. The air in the alley was eerily silent. The doors were shut tight, the signs hanging precariously. The deeper they went, the more they noticed people sitting huddled in dark corners with their faces down. Glancing at these scenes, Kana quickly asked, "Kehoe, what happened to the market?" Mr. Kehoe looked sad and scared. Someone got infected with the hydroplague. Hearing his announcement, Sonia asked in alarm, "Hydroplague?" Mr. Kehoe sadly recounted, "Yes. Now water has to be rationed to each person to limit the spread of the disease. Everyone has to carry a bucket to the reservoir to ask for water." The guard stood watch, shouting at everyone, "Get in line." The more he spoke, the sadder his voice became. After the price of water skyrocketed, the market had no hope left. Kana stared in horror. Mr. Kehoe continued his sad story. Now the water supply is directly managed by the commanders. As he was speaking, a guard grabbed a man in an orange shirt and barked, "What are you hiding under your shirt?" Then he turned and signaled to another guard. "Hey, this guy's trying to steal water," he shouted, holding up a water bottle. The man in the orange shirt was terrified, trembling, and clasping his hands to beg. "My family has 4 people. The ration water isn't enough for us for a whole week. Please have mercy on us." Hearing his plea, the guard, far from being moved, kicked him. "Shut up." Kana and Sonia witnessed the scene, frozen in horror. The guard, weapon in hand, his face murderous, said, "You have violated the laws of the Busan Association." The other man could only bow his head and beg, "I'm very sorry." Hearing the plea, the guard became even angrier. He used his weapon to beat the man repeatedly, growling, "The law is the law." The man cried out in pain. Seeing this, Kana was furious. She wanted to rush out and save the man that he has to suffer such a punishment just for water. Clark Miller sat cross-legged, watching Kana observe, then sighed wearily. "I heard you caused trouble with the Busan Council. I thought you were dead, Kana." Mr. Kehoe, standing beside her, quickly held her back, advising, "Don't, Kana. This isn't the Busan Association it used to be." While they were arguing, Noah stood frozen, watching the scene before him. After beating the man unconscious, the guard was still not satisfied. He lifted him up to warn everyone. Everyone must obey the law, thanks to this guy. No more distribution today. Hearing that there would be no more water, the people cried out in fear. "What? No. How are we supposed to survive until the next water supply?" Seeing the crowd's commotion, the guard shouted, "Anyone with a problem, say it to my face." At that moment, as if unable to bear it any longer, Noah flew in and delivered a kick to the guard's face. Seeing Noah's action, Kana and Bota were stunned. The complaining crowd fell silent, astonished by the boy's action. After knocking down the guard, Noah shouted, "Water is everyone's right." Seeing his comrade attacked, the guard next to him quickly raised his gun. "Don't move, Brand." In the critical situation, Kana rushed to save Noah. Bota quickly grabbed the other guard's gun. Attacked by surprise, the guard only had time to let out a cry of fear. Then, by reflex, he fired. The arrows flew out and lodged in the water tank. The guard who had been kicked quickly ducked to avoid them. When the arrows pierced the tank, creating holes, the water inside began to spray out. Water splashed everywhere, creating a small, artificial rain. Seeing this, the other guard could only exclaim in horror, "Ah." When people saw the water, they started rushing to collect it. Water! Water! The water tank continued to gush, and people scrambled with their buckets to collect the water. The guard tried to push through the crowd to stop them. "Back off!" But no one listened. In their eyes, there was only water. Water! People pushed and shoved to get water, making it impossible for the guard to stop them, and he was pushed and bumped painfully. Seeing the water, everyone was overjoyed, their faces radiant and filled with satisfaction. Kiho stood to one side watching the scene, speechless. But then he too smiled, expressing his joy that I'm so glad you've come back. Noah was happily playing in the water. The guard who was being pushed around still tried to shout, "Get that brat." Seeing this, Mr. Kiho quickly pulled the children to run away. "Let's go. More of those guards will be coming soon." While running, Noah turned to Bota and said, "Thanks for the help." While running, Lita suddenly stopped. Everyone turned back in surprise, not understanding what was wrong with her. Bota asked Lita. She just stared straight ahead, then hesitantly asked Bota, "Can you hear that?" He was confused. Hear what? Suddenly, a loud noise echoed. To his astonishment, everyone looked in surprise in the direction Lita was moving. Noah wondered, she can fly. As soon as he finished speaking, something shot past the boy like a flash. Everyone chased after it in alarm. Bota called out as he climbed, "Wait." Meanwhile, Noah and Mr. Kiho were still below, bewildered. As soon as he reached the top, Bota used all his strength to swing himself over, landing safely. Then he and the others went to find Lita, looking around and muttering, "Where is she?" When he saw Lita, he quickly shouted, "There she is." In front of them was a manhole cover being opened. Deep, dark pipes, pitch black. The main pipe connected to countless smaller pipes. Along the edge were other paths with iron barriers. Lita stood there, staring blankly at the scene before her. She was standing in front of a giant factory system, seemingly sensing someone inside. She quickly asked, "Is that you?" She continued to speak, even though there was no reply. "Why are you so angry?" Just then, a man appeared from behind, shouting, "Hey kid, how did you get here?" The little girl turned around silently. At the same time, elsewhere, Bota's group was struggling to climb down the pipe. When they got down, they hurried to find Lita, looking at the strange creatures submerged in containers. Kana quickly asked the other two, "What is this room?" It wasn't here before. Bota didn't pay attention. He was only focused on finding Lita, his face full of worry. "Lita, where did she go?" Then, at another spot, he seemed to discover something and quickly glanced over. Seeing two figures in front of him, he looked astonished. It was Lita. She called out cheerfully, "Bota." Beside her was an old man fixing her hair. Kana looked at the old man and exclaimed, "Dr. F.O.I." He was still focused on fixing Lita's hair, but he didn't forget to reply, "So you're still alive, Kana." His hand caressed Lita's face as he smiled and said, "This child is very impressive." His hand slowly moved to Lita's eyes, his voice full of excitement, as if he had just discovered something new. The mutation is spreading throughout her body, but she still maintains her human form. Suddenly, Dr. F.O.I. spread his hands in front of the girl, his voice affectionate. Why, dear child, there are two different worlds fighting inside your body." Suddenly, he stopped, his expression changing, becoming more frightening. His voice also turned cold. "Tell me, what the hell happened to you?" At the same time, elsewhere, Dohu was standing in front of the punctured water tank, water still leaking out. His face was murderous as he turned and asked, "Who did this?" The soldier reported fearfully, "A masked man and a woman, sir." Hearing the soldier's words, his eyes bulged even more, the blood vessels becoming clearer. "And you let them escape?" Before the other could answer, he delivered a kick to the soldier's stomach, sending him flying into the wall. The soldier coughed up blood from the kick, able only to lie moaning in pain at his feet. But it seemed his anger was not yet appeased. He just glanced at the soldier with a look of disgust. He began to crack his knuckles. Then he ordered, "Find them and bring them to me." Hearing the order, the soldiers quickly shouted, "Yes, sir." At that moment, in the small room, the doctor sat on a chair and asked, "She escaped from the Jinn Note's egg, and she can control the Jinn Note's offspring." His face showed a sinister, calculating expression as he voiced his thoughts. "Perhaps this is just a hypothesis, but this could be because of your mother, who also had this disease." Hearing this, Lita was stunned. "Mother?" As for Kana, she seemed to realize something. In her mind, she saw the image of Lita covered in injuries, facing terrifying monsters. Kana marveled silently, an amazing ability. Then, the little girl with blood-soaked hands hugged her brother tightly. Kana thought further, and her miraculous recovery after the mutation. Right then, as if realizing something, Sonia's face showed clear surprise. She exclaimed, "Wait a minute, Lita's mother also had the hydro plague? How can an infected person give birth to a normal child?" Seeing everyone's surprise, the doctor explained, "The only explanation is a miracle." She held on until the end. With that, he stood up and slowly approached the machine, recounting, "Your mother was infected, and now you too have come here. It's almost like fate." At that time, Many people had this disease. Anyone who got it looked terrifying. The doctor recounted painfully. The hydro plague spread throughout the Busan Union, and the number of deaths was countless. He sighed helplessly and said, "People thought it was just a harmless epidemic. I didn't think so." The doctor explained further that epidemic didn't just infect humans, but even sea creatures were infected. The disease has spread to all the seas of the world. He continued, 130 years ago, when the comet, his eyes seemed to look into the distant past, hit the moon, it shattered the moon into pieces. Storms arose. That impact turned the whole earth upside down. Heavy rains and strong winds appeared, and a great flood lasted for 70 years. Thunder and lightning, heavy rain, and strong winds submerged the city in a sea of water, bringing with it a plague. This plague was so dangerous and terrifying that any sea creature infected with it turned into a monster. Not just sea creatures, but humans were also devastated by this plague, and whoever refused to change would contract the hydro plague. Hearing this, Sonia screamed in horror. That's the source of the disease. Both Bota and Lita couldn't believe their ears, their eyes wide with shock. At that moment, he asked the doctor, "Why was our mother infected?" Hearing the question, the doctor was silent for a moment. Then, he began to speak, looking at a jar containing something. The hydro plague spread throughout the Busan Union 15 years ago. In the doctor's mind, an image of the children's mother in her 20s appeared, incredibly beautiful. The only person to establish a stable state for this disaster was your mother, Nerissa. Then, he spoke of her family background. She was the daughter of a wealthy, upper-class family. In her youth, the children's mother had a strong personality, disliking the restrictive life of the upper class and hating boredom. She only found joy when she was with people from the lower class, always getting along with them. And the children's mother had a passionate love for diving, enjoying exploring ruins with other divers. After one dive, she brought up a strange object and showed it to Tian. "Look, Tian, I found a strange-looking pot." Looking at the object his lover showed him, he replied helplessly, "People call that a toilet bowl." Hearing that, she looked at him intently and said, "It looks so strange. I'll keep it in my collection." Hearing his beloved say that, the young man could only sigh. If you keep collecting things just because they look strange, the Busan Union will be flooded with them soon. Hearing her lover's teasing, she leaned close to his face and replied, "Let's put them on our little boat when that happens." They looked at each other affectionately and shared a passionate kiss. A few days later, they went diving together again. On the very day, the Busan Union organized a major expedition to search for relics. While the group was diving, they discovered something. That's when Nerissa found it. It was deep on the seabed, buried. Soon after, she brought this strange thing to the doctor's room. At that time, she pointed to it and asked him, "Doctor, what do you think this is? Is it a treasure?" He meticulously observed and analyzed it. There's no iron or any marine plants on the surface. It's empty inside. He stared at it, his face thoughtful, then said, "I've never seen anything like it. I need to run some more tests." But sadly, in the diving team that day, there was a young man who was sick, looking very pained. Patient 0 was a diver in Nerissa's team that day. A few days later, the number of patients with this disease increased. A mother who had just lost her child to the epidemic screamed in agony, "My child." Then 2, 5, 10 people. The number of cases just kept rising. At that time, the situation was extremely tense. People worriedly discussed, "What is this?" A disease with a 100% mortality rate. The doctor continued. Fear spread throughout the ship. They were in a panic, shouting, "The immigrants have spread the hydro plague. We need to kill them." Immediately, those people were driven away. One by one, the immigrants were thrown off the ship. The ship's owner, also terrified, threw the others off the boat, cursing, "Get off our boat. Get out." The people who were thrown off, their hands tied, begged incessantly, banging on the door, "Don't do this. Please, I'm not infected. Please open the door." Soon after, the ship's owner, without any mercy, threw them all into the sea during a violent storm. The people thrown overboard were battered by the waves, one powerful wave after another crashing down on them. The rest tried to cling to the side of the boat, constantly crying for help. "Save us." The people on the boat heard their cries, but they were too scared to do anything, and the only thing they did was remain silent, watching helplessly. The entire crowd was now stunned with fear, looking at each other anxiously, utterly confused. Their panic had unleashed the monster. After a struggle, unable to fight against the fierce waves, those who were thrown overboard gradually sank to the bottom of the sea. This was an effective solution to the overpopulation problem the Busan Union was facing. The undesirable elements had been eliminated. At that moment, a struggle broke out. Gathering all the sick people together, a bald man stood up and rallied the crowd. "The hydro plague is not a disaster. It's the upper class lying, so they can eliminate us." The police saw this and immediately ordered their subordinates to advance. "Stop them." Immediately, the masked soldiers rushed in, attacking and killing the others. Witnessing the bloody scene, Tian stood frozen, not knowing what to do. His face was now filled with extreme anger, his eyes wide. The doctor continued, but Tian was not the kind of person who could stand by and watch this happen. Then he took action, grabbing the officer's hand and shouting, "Stop, Toho!" Seeing him block the way, he gritted his teeth and asked, "You're disobeying a superior's order." Hearing that, his blood boiled even more, and he clenched his teeth. At this point, the doctor recounted to the children, Tian fought for the immigrants. His resistance movement was right. Many people were saved. Tell them the truth, soldier. It was all created by our diving team. The woman, her face unable to hide her anxiety, earnestly pleaded with the doctor before her, her voice full of entreaty. Nerissa cried, sparkling tears rolling down her beautiful face. She wailed through her sobs, "The number of infections hasn't increased anymore. We shouldn't be doing this." Dr. Foi lowered his head, speaking slowly and helplessly. "Nerissa, do you really think the upper class doesn't know this? They already knew this wasn't a disaster." His eyes were sad, his voice growing softer. They wanted this massacre. Why? Nerissa cried out in despair, asking resentfully, her beautiful eyebrows furrowed. Why? Then she suddenly realized something, her pupils contracting in shock. Splotches appeared on her hand. It was a sign of infection. Nerissa took her own hand, staring at the strange marks, unable to hide her horror. Even Dr. Foi couldn't help but be frightened when he saw it. He stammered, sweat pouring down. Nerissa, for the crime of treason, they had to leave the Busan Union. The rickety boat moved away from the Union, its faint light in the night a heart-wrenching scene. Nerissa was pregnant, with Tian by her side taking care of her. The young couple looked so warm and happy. But the hydroplague continued to eat away at Nerissa's life. She could do nothing but helplessly accept the harsh reality. After finishing his story, Dr. Foi looked at the two siblings and said, Bota, Lita, Nerissa couldn't survive the transformation, but somehow she gave birth to you too. I'm sure she passed on some traits when she went through the mutation. Bota and Lita listened intently. You already know you two are different from others, right? He asked. Bota seemed to understand suddenly, his pupils contracting sharply. He remembered that day with Sonia, when she asked him, how long can you hold your breath underwater? Bota hesitated. A maximum of 40 minutes. 40 minutes without breathing? Is that possible? Sonia was surprised, unconsciously speechless. I don't know how either. Bota replied. This reminded Sonia of the moment Bota gave her air when she was about to drown. Dr. Foi continued. Kinnote must know this. The image of the purple monster returned to his mind, slimy, ugly, and horrifying. Its tentacles wrapped around the person inside, its jagged-toothed mouth wide open, looking terrifying. Dr. Foi continued. That's why she chose Lita, the one who has the most similarities to her. He hesitated, then added, for the position of successor. Lita was bewildered, her mind blank. Successor. Those words kept swirling in her mind. Your transformation was halted because you were rescued too soon, but Dr. Foi slowly recalled the bloody scene of Bota holding Lita in his arms. Unconscious, without a single movement, Tio think that it resulted in this wonderful balance. It's extraordinary. But right after that, he brightened up again, looking at Lita with a cheerful expression. His pupils widened as he thought of something, his voice still even that I'll need to study you for a bit. Kana finally spoke up, asking worriedly, Doctor, is there a way to save Lita? Hey, why cure her when she's so perfect? The doctor looked at Kana, his voice calm. Lita was speechless, as was Kana. Doctor, as if understanding Kana's thoughts, the doctor was silent for a moment, his expression deep in thought. How long do you think humanity can survive with the earth covered in water like this? He asked. A question that seemed to have no answer. An entire city floating in the middle of the sea, surrounded by water, not a single sand dune in sight. Even concrete islands will collapse under the waves. A catastrophic scene appeared before their eyes. Heavy rain and the unstoppable collapse before the powerful, destructive waves, and the giant ships will be severely breached, right? Humanity will soon be extinct, the doctor continued. He spoke quietly, his voice full of determination that if we want to live, we need to change it. Both Bota and Kana guessed his intention. Kana spoke first, swallowing hard, sweat breaking out. Doctor, are you talking about? Before she could finish, a loud noise came from the ship's hold, as if someone was banging hard. Is it hungry already? The doctor looked up, muttering to himself. Bota glared at him worriedly and asked, what's in there? The doctor didn't answer, just told him, go see for yourself. Bota and Kana slowly approached the glass door, their caution evident. Crash! Something suddenly slammed hard against the glass in front of them. Bota jumped back, his pupils wide as if he had seen something terrible. It was a strange blue-black creature, with small horns like seaweed on its body and some strange glowing spots. In the water, the creature's face appeared, looking like nothing less than a hideous skull that I've seen it before, Bota realized, a flicker of panic in his eyes. But where? He tried to remember. The creature thrashed continuously in the water, its body contorting in a grotesque way. Gradually, a strange scene unfolded. It seemed to be regenerating into a human face. As the face slowly took shape, a familiar yet incredibly strange feeling washed over him. Bota was stunned, horror evident in his eyes, an invisible pressure weighing down on him. That face appeared. It was Tion. Bota realized it, gritting his teeth in fear, unable to speak. It can't be. Behind the newly formed face, a pair of eyes gleamed in the dark water. The monster appeared before him. Bota was horrified, his eyes wide open. "It will save us," the doctor said from behind Ken. The monster's face slowly transformed, becoming a face very similar to Bota's father. His eyes widened in disbelief. Dr. Foi affirmed, "It will save us." Bota stared at the monster, whispering its name, Ken. Bota couldn't contain his rage. "What is this? Why did you bring Ken back?" Foi replied calmly. "It took 4 years for it to regain its ability to eat. It is a valuable asset." Kana also exclaimed worriedly, "It's too dangerous. She want to stop this. Stop this right now, doctor. It's one of the 7 sea devils. Its abilities are worth the risks." He approached Lita, his voice full of praise. "Humanity doesn't have much time left, and Lita happened to arrive just when we needed her." Kana angrily retorted, "We're here to turn Lita back into a human, not to help with your monster experiment." Foi looked skeptical. "Turn back into a human?" His expression darkened. "Are you saying she's not human just because she looks a little scary?" Foi's hand rested on Lita's shoulder. He refuted Kana's words. "How can you determine what is human and what is not?" He declared coldly, "If we don't adapt to the new ocean planet, the only thing awaiting humanity is extinction." Foi gave an example, just like the dinosaurs. His voice was frantic as he emphasized, "Humanity needs to evolve." Immediately, Kana stepped in between, shielding Lita. She warned in a cold voice, "Back off." The doctor was bewildered by her attitude. "Kana." Bota also drew his sword that we need to kill Ken. "We can't let it live." Sonya also came to support Kana. The 3 of them advanced towards the monster's incubator. Foi started to worry. This is bad. Just then, the sound of many footsteps approached. The 3 of them heard the sound and turned around. A squad of guards had appeared. They surrounded them. "Freeze." The 3 immediately raised their weapons to fight. The guards also raised their guns threateningly. "Drop your weapons." Bota gritted his teeth, his expression bewildered. How did they know we were here? Suddenly, Dr. Foi appeared from behind him. He injected a liquid into his neck. Foi admitted, "This is my duty." Sonya saw him get injected and collapse, horrified. "Bota." He fell, sinking into unconsciousness. Lita and the other 2 rushed to catch him. "Bota, what are you?" Just then, a man appeared. "Well done, Dr. Foi." It was a man with a commanding presence, and long time no see, Kana. He was the Captain Bang Bitch of the Busan Association. Kana also called his name in surprise. "Captain." Lita and Sonya were startled. "Captain?" Bang Bitch tried to calm the situation. "Why don't you all lower your swords? I'm here to talk." Kana gritted her teeth, her face full of indignation. "Talk?" The captain glanced at the microphone on the table. "I've heard everything you wanted to say." Kana scrutinized him. "You want to deal with that child?" The captain replied easily, "We can do that for you." But then he said a condition, on the condition that you cooperate with us. It seemed the captain didn't want to confront her either. Dialogue is the best way to resolve any conflict, right? Kana turned to look at the unconscious Bota, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she had to accept that we'll hear you out. The captain waved his hand, and the soldiers immediately lowered their weapons. Foi ordered the soldiers, "Escort our guests inside." "Yes, sir." On the Union Busan ship, the sound of machinery echoed everywhere. Kana and Bang Bitch stood talking privately at the edge of the ship. He told her about the ship's history, that a rather impressive ship, isn't it? It has protected us from being submerged for over a decade. Kana was silent for a long time before replying. If the system collapses, even a ship as sturdy as this can be submerged instantly. Suddenly, the captain gestured for her to look up. "Look." Kana reflexively looked up. A large M was carved deep into the ship's hull. He explained to Kana, "The spirit of Tianma is returning through the lower class people." Bang Bitch provided her with more information. "There have been 3 rebellions this week alone." Kana countered skeptically, "This isn't a rebellion. It's just people wanting to drink water." The captain frowned, displeased. This divided state cannot be improved. His eyes glinted with a threat. The supplies on the ship cannot be divided equally among everyone. Kana warned him beforehand, "I will not help you suppress the people on the ship." "No." The captain already had a plan. You do your job. He had arranged it for her to go back and become a hero by killing that monster and saving everyone. Hearing that, Kana suddenly became tense. What do you mean? The captain smiled faintly. We can't give them supplies, but we can give them hope. His words seemed to imply something. Hope cannot be bought with money. Kana was stunned, stopping in her tracks. The captain looked at her assertively. You are the most suitable person. He explained his reason for choosing Kana. You are a refugee, raised to be an ace of the... You are an ideal role model for the people to see the hope they need and to erase their discontent. Kana refused decisively. I refuse. The captain then switched to another topic. You want to cure that Lita child, don't you? He told her what they had done. We have invested a large sum in Dr. FOI's research on the hydroplague. He clearly understood Kana's situation, that if anyone can save Lita, it's Dr. FOI. Kana now understood. That's why you came back here, right? The captain made a promise that we will provide you with everything the ship has, including money or information to cure Lita. After speaking, he extended his hand. Now choose Kana. He wanted her to make a decision. Would she agree or not? Kana looked at the captain coldly, thinking, as the sun slowly rose on the horizon. Gentle sunlight covered the ship, a light breeze drifting through the window. Bota, who had been unconscious, slowly woke up. He found himself in a rather comfortable room. Bota sat up with a start, remembering dazedly what happened. Outside the door, a man was waiting. Good morning, sir. Bota was still bewildered. Where am I? On the highest deck of the ship. The man replied respectfully again. Welcome home, young Master Bota. Bota sat up with a start, remembering dazedly what happened. Outside the door, a man was waiting. Good morning, sir. Bota was still bewildered. Where am I? On the highest deck of the ship. The man replied respectfully again. Welcome home, young Master Bota. He was dazed, noticing the word home. Bota looked around in disbelief. This is a house. He followed the man to the living room. To his surprise, Sonia and the others were already there. Bota, his comrades, also appeared. Bota was overjoyed. Noah, Lynn, looking good, Bota. Then he quickly looked around. Lita? Where's Lita? The butler opened the door at that moment. It's time, young Mississippi. A slender figure entered. It was Lita, all dressed up. She called out, Bota. Sonia stared at her, stunned. So pretty. Noah and Lynn also silently admired her beauty. Bota was dazed for a long moment. Lita. The butler was extremely moved. Young Miss Lita. It's as if I'm seeing Lady Lisa in the flesh again. You mean our mother? His face shone with happiness. It is an honor to serve the young master and young miss once again. I'm the butler of this family. You may call me Mr. Butler. He informed them of their identity. Master Bota and Miss Lita, you are the 27th generation descendants of the famous Sun Clan. The butler told them about their family's history. The Sun Clan ran a huge corporation before the submersion disaster occurred. And as one of the 10 most powerful families in the Busan Union, our family is responsible for all the food production facilities on this ship. Sonia was clearly in deep shock. What the hell? Why did you hide this when you're obviously so rich? I didn't know. The butler's eyes welled up with tears again, his expression pained. If only Lady Lisa hadn't fallen in love with that Du Tianma. Then, he led them to the dining table. There's much to talk about, but let's sit down before the food gets cold. Before them was a lavish feast with all sorts of delicious dishes. Sonia took one bite and was surprised. I've never seen meat like this before. That is a type of beef called higu. Gongtae tried the noodles and also couldn't believe it. Damn, is this heaven? These are all dishes I've never seen before. Absolutely delicious. That dish is called japchae. Lita picked up a fruit from the table. What is this? That is a fruit called an apple. There are 10 apple trees in the Busan Union. He explained to them that the 10 families who built this ship had planted them one by one as symbols. Lita clearly loved it. Apples? They look so beautiful, and they smell so good. The butler was moved to tears again. It's all yours now, children. I'm so glad I can still serve you both. Meanwhile, Bota was unusually silent. He glanced around the room at the countless bottles of whiskey on the wall. Then he thought about the living conditions here and the faucet with its unlimited hot water. He compared it to the meager amount of water distributed to the poor. They had to collect water collectively, waiting in long lines, even being beaten and scolded by soldiers. The law was absolute. Bota was haunted by this disparity. The lower class was suffering just for a bottle of clean water. He looked over at the luxurious bathtub, while the upper class used this precious water for bathing. He looked at himself in the mirror. Does everyone in the upper class live like this? Everything is theirs just because they were rich 100 years ago. Suddenly, Bota froze. Kana, where's Kana? He rushed off, even brushing past the butler. Young master. Bota's heart was filled with anxiety. In a way, did something happen to her? Panic began to rise within him. Where is she? Bota's expression could no longer remain calm. Kana. The girl's face was vivid in his mind. Bota threw open a door. Behind it was a guard. He also turned his head to look at him, a familiar face with bloodshot eyes. Bota was startled to realize Dohu glared at him. He looked at him, mistaking him for his father, Tion. Dohu growled. He furiously grabbed Bota by the collar. Why are you still alive? Dohu gritted his teeth. How? The boy just looked at him calmly. Dohu suddenly realized, you're Bota. He grabbed the hand holding his shirt. Then he directly broke his wrist. Dohu groaned in pain. He knelt, completely overpowered by Bota. The boy warned him coldly. Who do you think you're messing with? You'll regret it if you dare treat me like the kid from 4 years ago. He was in too much pain to speak. Bota's eyes were lifeless. He thought to himself, I never noticed, but he was always this small. The dark past of 4 years ago was still vivid. This guy used to be the nightmare of a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old, always looking for a chance to throw someone overboard for a few coins. Bota frowned, an unanswered question replaying in his mind. How many dirty deeds has this guy committed during his time on this damn ship? A murderous intent suddenly flared up inside Bota. A thought flashed through his mind. I have to finish him off right here and now. Dohu, cunning as a fox, also sensed the strong killing intent from Bota. He scrambled backward, keeping a safe distance, as if afraid of getting hit with a combo. The old butler rushed over, raising his hand to intervene. That's enough. The old man's face was filled with killing intent, his voice harsh. The captain has already expressed his apologies to Lady Lisana and Tianma. Now, young Master Bota and young Lady Lita are the legal heirs of the guild. The butler turned, throwing Dohu a sharp, warning glare, threatening one of the noble families of the Busan Alliance. What? Are you sure you can bear the consequences of this? His eyes glinted with a deadly danger. Bota wouldn't sit still either, quickly interjecting, Mr. Butler, do you know where Kana is? Hearing Kana's name, Dohu jumped as if electrocuted, stammering, Kana is back here too. And speak of the devil, Kana was currently in her element, fighting fiercely on the open sea, sweeping through everything like a whirlwind. Her comrades were dumbfounded, their jaws dropped, exclaiming, Kana is getting stronger. This is our true captain. The whole crowd cheered her name like crazed fans meeting their idol. Kana, Kana, Kana. Even some news hunters showed up, certain they would capture some hot footage. Did you get all of that on camera? But I have a feeling she's toying with us. The camera zoomed in, capturing Kana's charismatic moment, causing the live audience to scream wildly, Kana, Kana is back. The news spread like a virus. People whispered to each other. Apparently Kana is a refugee, just like us. Is that true? Kana's appearance breathed new life and motivation into everyone that she's the absolute best. It's amazing. So even a refugee can become the leader of the Haponis. Her special status was like a morale boost, making everyone feel more confident. Nothing can stop us. As long as we give it our all like Kana. Maybe I should apply to become a Haponis too. Meanwhile, in a hidden corner, Dohu gritted his teeth, his face grim as if he'd lost a fortune. Kana, so you tricked me, didn't you? He looked up at the cool poster of Kana's comeback on the wall, his heart filled with resentment. Dohu hissed through his teeth, his voice full of hatred. You wanted this. Do you think you bastards can just live here like nothing happened? In the midst of it all, Kana was still riding the waves, majestic and imposing. Kana, Kana. Suddenly, her sixth sense warned her, and she became vigilant, her sharp gaze sweeping towards the ship's bay. Inside, Lita was being escorted to C4. The little girl trailed behind. She's catching up. The doctor is waiting. Yes, I'm coming. For his face appeared, enough to make Lita's face turn pale with fear. This girl already disliked him, and now she had to face him, screaming internally. Oh no, do I have to see that creepy doctor again? Lita glanced at the people ahead, her feet feeling like they were made of stone. Not wanting to move, I don't want to go. Suddenly, as if prompted by something, Lita spun around, her eyes landing on a familiar room. That's a stream of memories from long ago flooded back. Someone's voice echoed. All right, this is where you two will stay. Lita recognized it immediately. This was the place where she and her brother had stayed in the early days. The little girl rested her chin on her hand, her expression full of curiosity. I wonder if it's still the same. Glancing quickly at her guide, Lita tiptoed like a cat, sneaking closer to the room. The little girl gently pushed the door. A familiar scene appeared. It's open. It was still an old room with crude furniture. Lita couldn't help but feel nostalgic. The room hasn't changed at all. Old memories came flooding back from the time when she and her brother were just little kids. Lita remembered herself whining, I'm sad, and Bota saying, you wasted our money on a handful of strange seeds. But it was Lita who diligently cared for the plant from that handful of seeds, murmuring, drink up, little plant. And then a miracle happened. The pot bloomed with breathtakingly beautiful flowers. The little girl stood admiring it, her heart full of nostalgia. Even the flower pot is still here. Suddenly, a voice from behind made Lita jump. Who are you? Lita was flustered, quickly explaining, I'm sorry, I thought this place was abandoned. The other person replied, this is my home. Suddenly, the young man recognized the little girl. Lita was also stunned, memories flooding back. You're the one who saved me back then. The boy grinned from ear to ear, introducing himself cheerfully. I never thought we'd meet again. It's great to see you. I'm Gunkim. And so the two began to chat. Gunkim asked, you're the one who used to live in this room for years ago. Lita told him all sorts of things, pointing to the flower pot. My brother and I took care of this plant together. Gunkim was surprised, really? It's grown so well even though I only water it. The little girl sank back in her thoughts. My brother said it's a symbol of hope. I didn't think they would be so beautiful. Gunkim looked up, his eyes shining with a dream. That's great. Hope. I hope I can become a Hapones. Lita asked curiously, a Hapones like Kana? Gunkim shook his head. He liked something different. Kana is cool too, but I want to become a Hapones like Tianma. Hearing Tianma's name, Lita couldn't help but be astonished. Tianma. Gunkim's face lit up, his voice full of admiration. Tianma was different. They say he didn't spy on or harm others. And that's what a true Hapones who protects the people is. Lita smiled unconsciously. She suddenly realized. So Dad brought hope to others. I wonder if I can be like that. Suddenly, Lita felt a change in her hand. She was terrified, her face changing color. She quickly hid her hand inside her sleeve. Seeing that Lita seemed strange, Gunkim asked worriedly, what's wrong? Are you okay? Lita stammered, I'm fine. Then she jumped up. Her voice hurried. I have to go now. Lita bolted, leaving a bewildered Gunkim calling after her, Lita. The little girl ran for her life, her heart filled with panic. No, the mutation hasn't stopped. Lita's eyes filled with anguish. She could feel the transformation continuing. The little girl screamed in despair. I don't want to live like a monster. Standing in front of the lab door, for was already waiting, his voice flat. You're late. Lita whispered, Lita, doctor. The little girl was almost begging, her voice cracking with pain. I want to stay human. I don't want to become a monster. For calmly explained, we don't have much, but we have succeeded in extracting mutagens from Kensi. I can't promise anything, but we are seeing good changes. For his face showed an indescribable joy. Help me complete the research. You have an unimaginable effect. You are the hope of humanity. Lita was stunned. Hope. The little girl laid down in the chamber, her heart full of doubt. Lita accepted her fate, her mind wandering. Does that mean I can help others too? We can save people from the Hydrops disease. But deep in her heart, Lita still wished, I want to stay with Bota and Kana. I don't want to leave them. Lita fell into a coma inside the test chamber, behind a rusty, round glass. A monster was staring out at the world. Its eyes were fixed on the test chamber where Lita lay unconscious. Its eyes were as big as two bowls, not blinking even once. The sun set, dyeing the sky outside the ship red. Lita followed Gunkim along the side of the ship. The little girl asked curiously, where are we going? Gunkim acted mysterious, winking a secret place. You're the first person I've brought here. Lita became even more curious, a secret place. Gunkim took her hand, warning, be careful not to slip. Their hands touched unexpectedly. Lita blushed slightly, her heart pounding. Drops of water dripped one by one from an old, dilapidated pipe. Lita watched Gunkim collect the water, asking innocently, is that water drinkable? Gunkim explained, this is one of the water pipes that leads to the top deck. The young man held the water container tightly. I'll give this to Mr. and Mrs. Kim. They just had a baby. Lita beamed, praising him. Gun is such a kind person. Her hand accidentally brushed against Gunkim's. A warm feeling spread through her. The two of them sat there, quietly watching the sky. The scene was so peaceful. In the distance, the sun was slowly setting. Gunkim asked softly, it's beautiful, isn't it? Afterward, the two brought water to the Kim family. He thought to himself, they were moved to tears. I don't know how to thank you enough, son. Gunkim just smiled, it's nothing. The young man even teased the newborn baby. You better grow up healthy, little buddy. The baby, as if understanding, grinned back in response. Lita watched the scene, feeling a strange warmth in her heart. So cute. They continued to bring water to the refugee children. The innocent, bright smiles of the children seemed to wash away all fatigue. They also shared water with the lonely elderly. Lita quietly observed Gunkim's every action. She remembered his words about hope. Hope, what a powerful word. I want to become a Hapones, one who brings hope to others. This must be the hope he wants to spread. Lita said decisively to Gunkim, you're going to be a great Hapones. I know you can do it. Gunkim enthusiastically gave a thumbs up. Let's make a bet. Lita nodded happily. After that, the little girl rummaged through her pocket. I want to show you this too. Lita pulled out a bright red apple. Gunkim was surprised. What's that? Lita smiled. It's called an apple. Take a bite. Gunkim obediently took a bite. The sweet, crisp taste spread through him, making him shiver with pleasure. He exclaimed, his voice full of amazement. "This is delicious, isn't it?" Lita nodded. "It's good, right?" The little girl excitedly boasted, "I have a lot more where I am. Let's give them to the others." Gunkim's eyes lit up. "Really? Everyone will love this." Lita hurried off. "I'll be right back. Wait here." Gunkim replied, "Okay." After Lita was out of sight, Gunkim's face turned red. The young man thought shyly to himself, "She's so cute." Suddenly, a strange noise from a nearby room startled Gunkim. He curiously peeked through a crack in the door. A horrific scene met his eyes. 3 soldiers were brutally beating a citizen. One soldier roared, "Want to say that again?" The other person stammered. He spoke politely. The poor citizen tried to explain, "Sir, the taxes are too high." Gunkim froze, not believing his eyes. "Still talking back, are you? The Busan Alliance is fair to everyone." His eyes turned red, flames of anger erupting. He used blood to write the letter on the wall, just like the Tianma used to leave. Gunkim rolled up his sleeves, his eyes determined. "I will become a Hapones like Tianma." The young man put on his glasses, pulling his hat down low. His expression was cold, not like these fake Hapones. Gunkim spun around, delivering a powerful kick. He charged straight at the guards. He shouted, his voice full of power, "Leave him alone." His words were like a command, attracting the attention of the guards. A bloody battle was about to unfold. Outside the ship, seagulls still soared freely. The brilliant golden sunlight shone down on the deck, creating a magnificent scene. In the bitch gang's meeting room, someone was reporting on the situation. He rattled off a series of figures. There have been over 40 applicants for the Hapones since Kana's return. The man's face showed clear confidence, and the number of Rios has decreased by 30%. One of the clan leaders gave an order. "Good. I want Kana's screen time doubled." They began to whisper among themselves. "What about the damages caused by the Hapones?" A cold voice rang out, "Raise the taxes." The whole group nodded in agreement. They were all cut from the same cloth. "That sounds reasonable." "I agree." "Me too." "I agree." Suddenly, someone noticed the empty chair. "I heard the successor of the Na clan is on this ship. Bota, right?" Another person spoke up. "I don't see him here." Another showed contempt, sneering. "That kid was very lucky to inherit the Na clan's fortune, but he's still just a piece of trash." They paid him no mind. One of them said, "He's the lowest shareholder anyway. Let's continue the meeting." On another deck of the ship, the atmosphere was much more lively. People bustled about, gathering in crowds as thick as ants. Someone couldn't help but be amazed. Are all these people Hapones applicants? There are so many. Just then, Kana walked by, attracting everyone's gaze. "Look, it's Kana. Kana." She suddenly realized something and turned her head. In the distance, Bota was waiting with his arms crossed, his expression extremely serious. Kana was stunned. "Bota." The two found a quiet corner to talk privately. Bota got straight to the point. "I want to become a Hapones." He stated firmly, "That's right." Kana immediately objected. "Bota, I don't agree with that." She explained, "Even if you don't join." Kana thought it was unnecessary. "We can still get Lita treated with all the help and live a comfortable life in the Busan Alliance." Bota frowned again, his voice full of worry. "But will we be safe?" Bota's words left Kana speechless. His eyes revealed a clear look of fear. Bota remembered the terrifying monster Kinsey. "Kinsey is also on this ship. None of us are safe as long as it's alive." Bota's gaze became incredibly serious. He held out his hand, his voice resolute. "It's time for me to take back my father's sword." Kana still disagreed. "Kinsey is locked in a steel water tank over 60 centimeters thick. She thought it was impossible. You can't get in or out." Bota growled, his face full of indignation. "Don't underestimate it." He recalled the painful past, his voice bitter. "My father sacrificed himself to kill that damn monster. But the fact that Dr. For revived it shows he's no longer in his right mind." Kana sighed, trying to reassure him. "You're worrying too much." Bota gritted his teeth, emphasizing each word. "I've seen with my own eyes what it can do over the past 4 years." Memories of unclaimed bodies flooded back, families torn apart by the monster. It has devoured countless families on the construction island. He even remembered how it impersonated his father, deceiving him and playing tricks on him. Bota stated firmly, "Kinsey is not like other sea monsters. It was like a dark entity, always bringing nightmares." Bota declared, "It's a demon." He explained slowly, his voice full of hatred. "It plays with people's minds, and Dr. For is the craziest one for reviving it." Kana listened stunned. Bota continued to emphasize, "It's not locked in there. It's just waiting for an opportunity. A scientist on patrol found for still working diligently." He quickly advised, "Doctor, take a day off." For just waved his hand, signaling him to leave. The scientist could only sigh, thinking to himself, "All-nighter again." Before leaving, he curiously looked back. That's some dedication he has. The door slammed shut, hiding the horrific scene inside. Countless people who had bothered for lay motionless at his feet. It seemed this person was not simply Dr. Four. Dr. Four's hands flew across the keyboard, his fingers twisting in an unnatural way. He ruthlessly pulled out a sparking electrical wire, tossing it aside like trash. The pressure gauge screamed, its needles spinning continuously. A piercing sound rang out. The handle spun nonstop. Steam hissed from the thick steel shell. The inspector from before was leisurely taking off his protective suit. He hung his clothes in the locker, then suddenly turned back to see a person with a book covering their face. That person asked, "Going home now?" The inspector was bewildered. "Doctor, shouldn't you be in the lab right now?" For now seemed alert. He opened his eyes, a surprised look on his face as if he had misheard. What? The alarm blared through the air. Both of them felt that something was wrong, that what's going on. Four was alarmed, quickly ordering, "To the lab now." They rushed to the lab. The door had just creaked open. A powerful blast of pressurized air hit them in the face. The inspector quickly covered his nose, his voice filled with horror. What happened in here? He was horrified to see a slimy creature crawling out of a pipe. "Doctor, over there." It slowly crawled out, slithering past the real doctor. The monster slithered on the ground, then gradually transformed into a human shape. And that human shape was none other than Dr. Four, an imposter who had deceived everyone. The real doctor quickly ordered, "Shut off all power sources quickly." The inspector replied, "Yes, sir." He had just run to flip the switch when, with a loud crash, a giant tentacle shot out, crushing him. He died instantly. Dr. Four screamed in horror, "Kim!" But it was too late. Kim was dragged into the water pipe by the monster. Dr. Four watched in shock as it slithered through the pipe. He yelled no. He tried to lock the pipe valve, muttering, "An experiment at my cost." The pipe emitted cracking sounds, as if it were about to break. Then suddenly, the tentacle inside lifted the entire pipe and the doctor high into the air. It slammed them down hard, sending for flying. He clutched his aching back, trying to get up. The sea monster's containment unit was still wildly spraying water. The pressure kept increasing until it burst. It exploded. Dr. Four screamed in despair, "No, the pressure vessel." He could only watch helplessly as everything unfolded. Then his eyes widened in absolute terror. A monster had escaped from the containment unit. Its sharp teeth looked terrifying, its eyes as red as blood. The doctor trembled, his voice filled with excitement. Extraordinary. The apples clattered to the ground. Lita happily ran off, hugging a pile of them. The little girl skipped past a crowd of protesters who were chanting, "Clean water is a human right. Clean water is a human right." Lita looked around, bewildered, still clutching the apples, her heart filled with confusion. Where did Gun go? Suddenly, she saw a streak of blood on the ground, still fresh and red. Lita trembled, covering her mouth with her hand, her face pale, blood. Her eyes widened in shock. Lita was sure it was Gun's blood. The little girl rushed through the crowd, the chant "Clean water is a human right" still echoing in her ears. Lita followed the trail of blood. It grew longer and thicker, staining the tiled floor. The little girl was terrified, her heart pounding. Did something happen to Gun? Finally, Lita stopped in front of a wall. She called Gun's name, her voice cracking, "Gun." But the only response was a man tightly holding Gunkum's body. The boy was no longer breathing. Lita was stunned, speechless. The man trembled, his voice full of pain. "Do you know this boy? He stood up to the Haponis to protect us." Tears streamed down his face, his voice choked, but they beat the poor boy to death. The apples in Lita's hands fell to the ground. She tremblingly reached out, touching Gun's hand. The little girl gently pressed his hand to her cheek, whispering Gun. Lita remembered what Gun had said. "That's great hope. My hope is to become a Haponis." She remembered the hopeful expression on his face. Tianma was different. They say he never spied on or hurt anyone, and was a true Haponis who protected the people. Remembering the kindness he had shared, he was nothing but kind. And yet now, only a cold body remained. Lita screamed silently. Gun didn't do anything to deserve this. Why? Her hand clenched, tears welling in her eyes. Why? Why do people want to kill each other? Lita sobbed, tears soaking her cheeks. Suddenly, there was a terrified scream. "See monster!" The crowd fled in panic, their screams echoing. "Shoot it! Hurry!" Those chaotic sounds rang in Lita's ears. Monster! Monster! She thought of Dohu, who had committed so many crimes. Then of the guild leader with his countless dark secrets. Who? And the cunning captain of the bitch gang. Who? And those 9 great families. Who? Lita's eyes turned pitch black, blood trickling from the corners. She gritted her teeth. Is the real monster? The people around were focused only on the alarm signal. The siren wailed throughout the ship, even reaching Bota and Kana, who were talking privately. Sonia's group also realized something was wrong. Emergency. Even the big shots and the great families were still bewildered. Emergency. The loudspeaker blared, broadcasting an order to everyone, all Haponis to your battle stations. Inside the corridor, A gruesome chewing sound echoed. A human leg dangled in midair. The monster Kinsey had returned, more formidable than before. The alarm blared incessantly. A squad of heavily armed soldiers rushed to investigate. The sound is coming from the lab. Was an explosion? One soldier wondered. Suddenly, one of them noticed something unusual. All three soldiers looked towards the pitch-black corridor, shrouded in shadow. A pair of dangling feet slowly appeared. A brave soldier shone his flashlight, shouting, "Who's there?" But what appeared before him was not just a pair of feet, but an entire body floating in midair. When they looked up, the sight was even more horrifying. It wasn't just one pair of feet, but a corpse. Bloody corpses floated, held by a giant, hideous maw. The three soldiers were scared out of their wits, screaming, "Oh!" They tried to scramble away, but the monster was already upon them. One was caught by it. The other two ran in panic. The captured one screamed horribly no. The monster spread its clawed hand. It intended to block the other two, but luckily, they managed to escape in time. "Hurry, the door is closing," the one in front shouted, hastily pressing the button to close the door. He urged his remaining comrade to hurry as the steel door slowly shut. "Move it!" Finally, the door slammed shut, just as the monster lunged. One of the two soldiers gasped for breath, his face pale. That was close. He immediately gave an order, "Go report this to the authorities." The other replied, "Yes, sir." Suddenly, they realized there were many civilians behind them. Wait. The two soldiers' faces changed. This was the bustling residential area, B12. This place was always crowded with people. They didn't dare think about the consequences. Damn it, this is a residential area? We're dead if we let that thing get here. Someone relieving himself had to grumble. Can someone turn off that damn alarm? People still didn't know what was happening, whispering among themselves, another Rios. Doesn't look like it. Danger was lurking, and no one knew. What the hell is going on? Everyone was waiting for an update. "Mom, what's that sound?" "I don't know either. Go back inside and study, sweetie." The monster had crept up to the main gate, standing still as a statue, waiting for the right moment. Truly a cunning demon. And the truth was, it was never really trapped in the water tank. It wasn't there because it was trapped, but to observe, to watch. Its target was this very system. It observed, learned, and even how humans operated. Kinsey used a tentacle to press the button to open the door. A blinding light. The door slowly creaked open. The monster had caught the residents of Area B12. It stuffed them into its giant mouth, crushing them with its sharp teeth. Blood splattered everywhere. The others fled in panic, screaming in terror. "What is that? Monster!" They all realized with horror it was a sea monster. It glanced at them with shifty eyes. It swung its arm, crushing another person. The horrific sound shattered a family's peaceful dinner. They didn't know what was happening, trying to endure the noise. The father couldn't take it anymore, his face red with anger. He roared, "Damn it!" He threw the door open, yelling, "Keep it down, you stupid Rios." But what greeted him was the demon's giant hand, swift as lightning. It crushed him with ease, then stuffed the corpse into its mouth. The others ran in fear, their screams attracting the monster's attention. "Help me!" It reached out, crushing the bridge where people were fleeing. Those on the lower level were also trying to escape. A large piece of the ceiling collapsed, right on top of a mother and child. "Mommy!" But a tall figure appeared, knocking the piece of ceiling away. A Hapones had intervened, a young man, his face resolute, full of life. The mother joyfully called his name, Bran. Everyone was overjoyed to see their savior. "It's Bran." "Where?" Everyone believed they would be saved, Bran. "We're saved." They chanted his name, Bran. Bran. Bran's other comrades had also arrived. "Look, the Hapones are here." Bran. One was a second-rank Hapones, the other a first-rank Hapones, Leo, and with them was the third-rank Hapones, Bran. Bran looked up at the monster, his eyes full of hatred, his voice hissing through his teeth. "For 4 years. He seemed resentful. We protected the Busan alliance without." The memory flooded back when the captain announced Kana's appointment. Kana will be the captain of the Hapones from now on. Kana. Bran was one of those who submitted Kana, but they had hoped Kana would take over when she returned. Dohu had once warned Bran, "Don't tell me you didn't see this coming." His words were both provocative and mocking. "You'll always be second place as long as Kana is here." Bran had been furious. "Shut up." He raised his weapon high. "I'll prove you wrong. Kinsey, I will kill you." Bran charged in to face the monster, determined to become a Leviathan slayer. But in the blink of an eye, the monster delivered a fatal blow. Bran's two comrades were stunned, not believing their eyes. The surrounding civilians were also dazed for a long time. Bran was left a mangled wreck. His face was lifeless, covered in blood. The people screamed in fear. It got Bran. Leo exclaimed in panic. How could something so huge move so fast? The two of them gave it their all, charging forward together. "We have to stop it." One of them pierced the monster's hand with a sword, but was immediately grabbed by Kinsey. If the Hapones fail, That person was swallowed by the monster. The Busan Alliance. It swallowed the tasty morsel whole. No one would be able to stop Kinsey anymore. The people once again scattered in chaos. As for Kinsey, it opened its mouth wide like a chasm. This place would become its hunting ground. Cut to the upper deck of the Busan Alliance. In the Busan Association's meeting room, the captain of the bitch gang was shouting, his voice filled with panic. Kinsey has escaped the lab and is attacking residential area B12. An old man sitting on high heard this and replied calmly, his voice flat. Dr. For finally completed it. One of the association members, his face wrinkled, lifted a glass of wine, took a sip, and said, "Lock all the doors leading to the upper decks." The bitch gang captain heard this and froze, his face showing clear confusion. What? The old man stared at him, then continued to give orders, his voice as cold as ice. "I want everything found down there." His eyes suddenly changed, blood vessels bulging, and he asked again in a savage tone, "Is that clear?" The other man's face darkened, as if he had just realized something terrible, and he stammered, "By any means necessary." At that moment, in the basement below, blood flowed everywhere, screams and crashes echoed without end, a scene of horrific chaos. Bodies were strewn everywhere, mangled, staining the entire basement red. The survivors pushed and shoved each other on the stairs, trying to find a way out, but the door was sealed shut. They screamed in desperation, their voices filled with fear. "Open the door. Let us through." Above the basement door, 2 soldiers stood guard, their guns aimed at the crowd, ordering coldly, "Back off. People from the lower levels are not allowed up here." People cried, begging pitifully, "Please, there's a sea monster down there." But the association's soldiers didn't care at all. They kept their guns pointed at them, then shouted threateningly, "We'll shoot if you don't back off." From the young to the old, everyone tried to find a way out of that hellish basement. They screamed, "Open the door. Let us through." From behind, a giant shadow slowly crept closer and closer. Seeing it, they grew even more panicked, terrified to the core, screaming, "It's coming up." The sea monster gradually approached, causing the crowd to push and shove even more violently. Its arms slowly reached out, preparing to grab a group of people. Surprisingly, a gleaming sword appeared. With just an extremely skillful spin, he sliced off the sea monster's clawed hand. After attacking, he gathered his momentum again, lightly leaping onto the sea monster's head. He gritted his teeth, putting all his strength into the next blow. From above, he spun, holding the sharp blade, and stabbed straight down into the sea monster's face. The sea monster, stunned from having its hand cut off in a flash. Bota had inflicted another deep wound on its face. After executing the second blow, he jumped away, landing safely on the ground. After Bota's successive attacks, the sea monster let out a terrible cry. It writhed in pain and rage, thrashing about, destroying everything around it. The people on the upper level, just saved by Bota, asked each other in surprise, their voices filled with confusion, "We're still alive." Kana and the others couldn't believe his strength, watching with wide eyes the battle between him and the sea monster. Without a scratch, he stood there proudly, looking cool, holding his blade, his face full of confidence. The people around whispered curiously, "Who is that?" The giant sea monster was heavily wounded. It roared, thrashed, and attacked frantically. The people, after being saved, were both scared and surprised, speechless, were still alive. Kana and the others stared intently at Bota. He was standing there, his expression serious, facing the sea monster. His cool image made everyone wonder in amazement. "Who is that?" An old woman in the crowded group suddenly spoke up, her voice filled with astonishment. "My God, that's Bota." Those who didn't know asked, "Bota?" The old woman's expression changed from astonishment to joy and pride, explaining to everyone with a voice full of emotion, "Tianma's son. The boy has really grown up." Those who didn't know him, but knew very well of a legend like his father, were in disbelief. "Tianma? Is that Tianma's son?" They were utterly shocked, stammering in amazement. Now that she mentions it, the boy looks just like his father. His face remained calm, confidently standing before the sea monster. "That's right, he is the son of the legend, Tianma." A woman among them, trembling with fear, pleaded in a weak voice, "Save us, Bota, kill it." Hearing this, everyone joined in, cheering enthusiastically, "Kill it. Bota, destroy that damn monster." Behind him, hundreds of people were placing all their faith and hope in a young man, standing strong before the sea monster. "Botama, son of Tianma, kill it." He stood tall, holding the blade his father left him, facing the giant, blood-soaked sea monster. "Bota, Bota." Bota calmly called the sea monster's name, his voice cold, "Kinsey." He looked straight into its angry, bloodshot eyes and said calmly, "It's been 4 years." Bota looked at it, the memory of his father bravely protecting him from it 4 years ago, flooding back. He whispered, his voice full of pain, "Dad." His eyes suddenly changed, becoming invincible. He continued, his voice bitter, "I lost him that day, but I always think about him every single moment. The image of him remembering that day, his father's body was covered in blood. He thought on, his heart aching, covered in scars. Back then, he was small, standing behind his father, watching him give his all to protect him. These scars are proof of what he went through to protect our family, a love he carved deep into his body along with him. Now, remembering the old memories, his brow furrowed in pain, he gritted his teeth. That's why it's unforgivable. He remembered his father's final moments, killed by the sea monster. Those noble scars, they could never be erased from him. The people around, hearing about his father's legendary past, felt a pang of sorrow and surprise. He continued, his voice full of determination. That was his ideal for living, for everyone on this ship. His expression gradually shifted to anger, his voice filled with indignation. So, you have no right to kill him. The sea monster's face stared intently at him, its eyes glowing red, filled with blood vessels. Bota grew more agitated as he spoke, gripping the hilt of his blade, his voice filled with hatred. My father sacrificed his entire life to kill you, so you are not allowed to live. He was enraged, gritting his teeth, glaring at the sea monster before him, his voice filled with killing intent. Today is the day you die. Suddenly, the sea monster opened its giant mouth and lunged towards him. Facing the giant sea monster, he remained strong, holding his blade tightly, swinging it towards it. Holding the blade, he gathered his momentum. Bota put all his strength into it, letting out a yell as he charged at the sea monster. He powerfully and decisively slashed a deep gash across the sea monster's mouth. It roared in pain. Then from the side, it swung its arm forcefully towards Bota. The blow had tremendous power, forcing him to block it with his blade. But even so, he was still sent flying by the sea monster, slamming hard into a wall. The people saw this and were extremely worried, looking at him and calling out, "Bota!" He groaned in pain, gritting his teeth, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. In a flash, it had rushed forward, opening its large, bloody mouth towards him. Bota reacted extremely quickly. He scrambled to one side, and the sea monster crashed into the basement wall. He fell hard to the side, sliding a long way across the ground, then struggled to sit up. The sea monster quickly ran towards him, wanting to eat him. His eyes remained firm. Gritting his teeth, he used his blade to block another blow from the sea monster. The powerful impact and the difference in strength gradually put him at a disadvantage. It used its strength to push him back, causing the steel wall of the basement to deform. Although he was sent flying, he still managed to regain his balance. Blood streamed down his face. He gritted his teeth, trying to get up again, from the wary, angry look he had just given the sea monster. Now his eyes showed absolute confidence. He smirked mysteriously. Suddenly, the expression on the monster's face changed. It looked surprised, then observed its surroundings. Now, all around were Bota's troops, aiming their guns at the monster. It turned out that all this time, he was just bait to create a diversion, helping everyone gather in full force. Everyone was ready to fight, aiming their guns straight at its giant body. From behind Bota, Kana, with a serious expression, stepped forward proudly, saying confidently, "Well done, Bota." The sea monster was terrified when it realized its disadvantageous situation. Kana, she looked at the monster with eyes as sharp as a knife, then continued, her voice challenging, "Let the hunt begin." Kana, Bota, and their brave comrades had located Kinsey's lair. The two of them, along with their comrades in arms, were ready for a lightning raid on the fearsome monster. Kana's face was cold as stone, without a hint of expression, her eyes fixed on the target, but her voice held a considerable amount of confidence and satisfaction. "Well done, Bota." Right before their eyes, the monster slowly materialized, its eyes as red as two burning coals. Kana, with eyes as sharp as daggers, declared loudly, "Let the hunt begin." She raised her energy rifle, aiming it straight ahead. The entire team immediately deployed into an encirclement formation, simultaneously attacking the monster. Kana gave the signal, her voice steely, "Fire!" A volley of energy rounds tore through the air, repeatedly hitting the monster's head, causing it to clutch its head and roar in pain. Kinsey tried to widen its bulging eyes, looking towards the incoming barrage. It swung its giant arm, aiming straight for the iron bridge where Kana and Bota's comrades were standing. With a devastating swing, Kinsey snapped the iron bridge in two. One of them was unfortunately killed by it. The others scrambled to find a way to escape before being caught by the monster. But Kinsey wasn't about to let them get away so easily. It mercilessly slammed them against the wall like swatting flies. The remaining soldiers had no choice but to retreat deeper inside. Poison-tipped arrows flew through the air. One lodged in its arm, another, fired from a special type of bow, wrapped tightly around its other arm. Two comrades, one on each side, provided cover for each other, continuously firing arrows into Kensi. After the arrows were firmly embedded in Kensi, one of the soldiers gave the signal, his voice resolute, pull. Immediately, both sides of its body were pulled taut by the bowstrings, tearing through its skin and both its arms. The monster let out a piercing scream. Kana looked straight at the target that was screaming madly in front of her, quickly signaling for the special vehicle to move now. The vehicle was in position, ready to build momentum. It accelerated, speeding like a bullet, charging straight at the monster. The vehicle, with its long, sharp drills at the front, slammed hard into Kensi, causing it to cough up fresh blood. It was in so much pain it couldn't even scream. The vehicle didn't stop, but plunged deeper, faster. The vehicle had pierced through its body. It let out a roar and then frantically counterattacked. It used its hands to grab the vehicle, then lifted it into the air. Kensi used all its strength, slamming the vehicle against the ceiling, crushing it like a paper box. Kana and Bota were both astonished, frowning as they watched Kensi's frenzied actions. After dealing with the vehicle, it glanced over, whipping its head around. It held the crushed vehicle, preparing to throw it at the soldiers. Without giving them a second to react, it slammed the vehicle straight down. Fortunately, there were survivors from that attack. They screamed in despair, "My leg. How are we supposed to beat that monster now?" A girl shouted, her voice full of determination, "Keep firing. We'll die if we stop attacking." With that, the girl raised her gun again and continued to fire. Under the flickering light of the energy bullets, the girl's silhouette stood out. Each bullet fired carried not only physical damage, but also a defiant declaration that they would never give up. The monster, caught off guard by the attack, swung out a giant tentacle. The tentacle slammed hard into the iron bridge where the girl was standing. The soldiers were thrown far away. The girl was startled as the monster threw the vehicle towards her. The vehicle crashed down, creating a horrific noise. It seemed as if the girl wouldn't survive being crushed by the vehicle. But no, Kana and Bota appeared just in time, using their swords to slice the vehicle into pieces. Then they both charged down towards the monster. It was stunned, looking up at the two of them with its red, bulging eyes. At that moment, Bota and Kana, their eyes burning with hatred, without a moment's hesitation, charged straight at it. The two of them, a perfect sword duo, struck down at the monster. Bota and Kana poured all their strength into their arms, the sharp blades slicing down the monster's spine from top to bottom. Kensi roared in pain. It counterattacked by using one of its remaining tentacles, preparing to attack them from behind. However, before it could strike, Bota and Kana reacted faster, severing the tentacle. The tip of the tentacle flew straight into the wall. At this point, Bota jumped up, somersaulting several times in the air, cutting off the tentacle while also slashing a long gash along its back, creating a deep wound. Faced with Bota's masterful coordination, his comrades couldn't help but be amazed. This time, the monster was in extreme agony. A horrifying scream erupted from Kensi's mouth as Bota's blade tore through its tough scales. With incredible speed and decisiveness, Kana used the extraordinary power of her legs to launch herself straight to the top of the monster's head. She focused intensely on its fatal weak point, then leaped into the air, somersaulting several times right above the monster's head. Then, Kana plunged straight down towards its head without a hint of hesitation. She put her entire body weight and strength into her arm. In this brutal and dramatic scene, Bota and his comrades couldn't help but be amazed and admire Kana's prowess. Kana's eyes remained cold and determined, not revealing any emotion. The soldiers felt as if she were a war god descended to earth. They whispered to each other, their voices filled with awe. "She's not human." It's amazing. Thanks to Kana, the tide of the battle had turned, as the monster began to weaken and collapse. Her comrades were overjoyed, cheering loudly, "We won. We're safe." In the moment, Kensi staggered, its breathing heavy and ragged after Kana's fatal blow. The tense silence on the battlefield was suddenly shattered by the excited and urgent cheers of her comrades. "Finish it, Kana! Kill that monster!" At that very moment, deep in Kana's mind, her eyes hardened and painful memories of the past flooded back. As a child, she had once wondered, "Why are we the ones being targeted by you, monster?" Kana directed her cold gaze towards Kensi, which was trembling in pain. Her voice hardened, "Humans are not food." Kana's voice choked for a moment, then became as cold as ice, full of defiance. You challenged us, and this is the result you get. She remembered her loved ones and comrades who had fallen. For the irreplaceable losses they had to endure in this harsh war of survival. Mess with us, and this is the price you pay. Around them, everything seemed to stop when they heard Kana speak. Everyone looked at her in astonishment. Kana slowly spoke, her voice full of power, human. Within her, rage suddenly surged. Her eyes looked as if they wanted to burn the monster, to mince it into pieces that we are not as weak as you think. Kana tightened her grip on her weapon, ready for the final blow, the strike that would decide the monster's fate. Allow me to send you to the abyss. Kinsey lay there, its face covered in blood, foaming at the mouth, motionless. Kana, her face also stained with blood, suddenly uttered in a hoarse voice, human. She stood there, holding two sharp blades, blood still dripping onto the monster's corpse. Kana's eyes flashed with a brilliant red light, her voice echoing, not as weak as you think. From somewhere, a gun barrel suddenly appeared, accompanied by a cold voice. Allow me to send you back to hell. A music card appeared, on its cover the image of a mysterious woman. Kana, covered in blood, raised her blade high. In the dark space, strange air bubbles floated up. Suddenly, iron bars flew from nowhere, piercing straight into Kana. They pierced through every fiber of flesh in her body. Kana let out a pain scream. Two soldiers standing nearby stared, their eyes wide with astonishment. Suddenly, a giant tentacle swung out, striking Kana directly. She was thrown far away. Bota shouted loudly, his voice filled with panic. Kana! The other soldiers also cried out in alarm. Where did that thing come from? Kana! Who shot her? Kana, covered in wounds, struggled to get up. She gritted her teeth, her eyes becoming frighteningly sharp. She looked towards the person who had just fired the shot. He was still standing there, hiding by the wall, his hand still clutching the gun. Kana was shocked, her eyes filled with bloodshot veins. She exclaimed in a voice full of hatred, "Do-who?" Kinsey's arms suddenly struck Kana hard, sending her flying once again. This time, she was thrown so hard her hair was a mess, but the question still echoed in her head. Do-who, why? His eyes remained cold, looking at her indifferently, his voice full of contempt. Did you think I would let you have all the glory? The monster still wouldn't let Kana go. It continued to stare at her, its giant mouth wide open, ready to swallow its prey. Suddenly, a loud noise rang out. The soldiers shouted, Kana. A terrible force had crushed the monster's giant head. It was Bota, trying to finish off Kinsey. He shouted, his voice full of determination, I'll kill you. His eyes shone with resolve, the blade still embedded deep in the monster. Kinsey screamed in pain, roaring to reveal a mouthful of bloody teeth. Another loud noise rang out. Kinsey fell forward. Bota still held the blade tightly. Sweat pouring down, he refused to let go. Kinsey crashed into the wall, shattering it. Bota was also thrown from the monster because of it. He was in free fall, but his hand still gripped the blade. Not giving up, he tried to balance himself on a flat surface. With that same determined gaze, he looked up at the splattering drops of blood. He once again stood up with his blade. Above him, Kinsey was trapped in the rubble of the wall. He suddenly shouted, his voice full of challenge, You think you can escape from me? The wall had a large hole punched through it by the monster. Kana also stood up, her body still trembling. She looked at Bota, her face showing clear sadness, thinking to herself, we were so close to beating it. The soldiers called out worriedly, Kana. At this moment, Kana's eyes became fierce, her teeth clenched. She turned, throwing a sharp knife that spun continuously. The knife's target was a man standing above, causing him to stumble. After a few seconds of surprise, the man tumbled down the stairs. Kana's eyebrows furrowed, her expression full of annoyance. The soldiers were even more astonished. Do-who stood up, his face showing clear vigilance as he looked at them. Two soldiers turned back, their faces bewildered. A gun suddenly came into their view. The soldiers were even more stunned, questioning him. No way. Was it you just now, Do-who? You shot Kana. He shouted in everyone's faces, his voice full of arrogance. Don't just stand there like idiots. That bitch just attacked me. Arrest her now. Kana grew even angrier. She confronted him. Everyone was struggling to kill that monster, but you let it escape. After hearing Kana, everyone showed open disgust towards Do-who. He turned to curse at Kana, his voice full of bitterness. You bastard child. Kana became even more furious. She shouted, Do-who. As she spoke, her hand tightened on her blade, her voice filled with indignation. You, of all people, should know what happens when you go against the law, right? He was stunned, stammering, what? Kana pointed her blade at him, her voice cold. The law you have followed until now. She frowned, gritting her teeth, her voice full of contempt. You have broken 3 of them. He continued to show contempt for Kana. Who the hell are you to talk down to me? You filthy refugee bitch. Kana was so angry that bloodshot veins appeared in her eyes. She yelled back at him, Do not interfere when Hapus are on a mission. Were you trying to kill a comrade? He seemed to go mad, roaring, "Shut up." He looked at Kana with a contemptuous expression. "I am a Hapuz of a noble class." He shouted even louder, his voice full of arrogance. "I am the law." At this moment, Kana truly exploded. She yelled back at him, her voice filled with indignation. "And above all, you are endangering the Busan Union." Dooku refused to back down. He picked up his blade and shouted, "Shut up." He charged towards Kana like an arrow, his voice full of threats. "I will teach you a lesson in manners." Kana did not flinch. She retorted, "I will punish you to death." The two swung their blades, flashing past each other like a whirlwind. Kana succeeded. Dooku's head was severed from his neck. His blood sprayed out like rain. Dooku collapsed to the ground, his body covered in splotches of blood. Kana's eyes had softened somewhat, but her eyebrows were still tightly furrowed. After the fierce battle, her face was covered in even more blood. Now, only a headless corpse remained on the ground. Kana just gave his body a cold glance before turning away. Everything happened too quickly. Kana collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Her other comrades rushed to her side, calling out worriedly, "Kana." Her legs trembled on the floor, still wet with blood. A weak sound escaped her lips, "Bota." Her eyes were drowsy. As she fell, she tried to tell everyone, "Go help Bota." Exhausted, Kana lay motionless on the ground. The soldiers rushed over, calling out loudly, "Kana." Her face was beaded with sweat, streaked with leftover blood, but in her heart, she couldn't stop thinking about Bota. She didn't forget to think about the monster clinging to the wall outside. "We have to stop Kensi." That monster once again charged inside, making everyone tremble with fear. It was the sea monster. It extended its four-fingered hand, now with only two, forward. The people thought it was going to kill more of them, causing them to scream in panic. Its sharp claws gripped the railing tightly. Kensi's massive body slowly climbed up, a terrifying sight. Bota bravely jumped over the railing, determined not to let it harm anyone else. His ragged breathing couldn't drown out the thought in his head. What is it doing? The sea monster was slowly inching its way up. It wasn't attacking the people, but was focused only on climbing. Bota, with eyes growing as strong and determined as Kana's, silently affirmed, "You're not going anywhere. I'll kill you before you do." At the end of the crane, a small figure appeared. It was a little girl standing there, her small feet, the gentle wind blowing her skirt. It was Lita, standing there stunned, holding a construction helmet in her hand. The little girl's eyes turned a mysterious blue, veins clearly visible on her face. Something had just created a streak of light in the dark night sky. Time rewinds. 3 hours earlier, a man was diligently working on a giant machine. Suddenly, a little girl approached, calling out Dr. Four. He turned in surprise, saw the little girl, and exclaimed, "Lita, you're not hurt." The doctor, his wrinkled face stained with blood, his oversized glasses covering most of his face, spoke again, his voice full of worry. "My experiment has been sabotaged. It's very dangerous here. Get to the upper floor." The little girl, catching raindrops in her hand, replied to him in an innocent voice. What did you do to me?" The doctor's face became indescribably strange. He clutched a box to his chest and began to lecture Lita, his voice full of pride. "I've been collecting the mutagens I extracted from Kensi and in this seed for so long." He recalled the past, and "I released it into the water tank to promote the evolution of humans in the Busan Union." Lita was lying on a machine, a beam of light shining down from above. The professor's voice still echoed in the space, but that was when a better seed appeared. "You." The little girl lay inside as the machine slowly started up. Dr. Four stood outside, holding a syringe. In the syringe was a strange blue liquid, the sharp needle glowing menacingly. He slowly injected the solution into the Four bag, then said, his voice full of confidence, "I believe in myself." The Four line gradually transformed into a strange DNA model. He placed his hand on Lita's shoulder and confided, his voice full of expectation, "Do you feel the change? Are you still conscious?" The old doctor exclaimed, his voice full of astonishment. Lita Four brought his wrinkled hand up, lightly touching the little girl's eyes, then remarked in a voice full of admiration, "Your eyes, they are so beautiful." The little girl, with a strangely calm expression, said to him, "You don't know what they really are, doctor." The doctor's eyes suddenly showed bloodshot veins. He retorted to Lita, his voice resolute, "It doesn't matter anymore." The space grew dark, but the old doctor's voice still echoed somewhere, challenging, "Show me what you can do." Back in the present, at the end of the crane, the figure of a little girl still stood there, her small feet, the gentle wind blowing her skirt. It was Lita, standing there stunned, holding a construction helmet in her hand. A soldier ran in frantically, reporting to the leadership of the Busan Association, his voice filled with fear. "The mission has failed. Kensi has escaped from the lower level." Captain Bitch, his face showing extreme fear, shouted, "What the hell are our troops doing?" The soldier stammered in reply, his voice trembling. The scene was one of devastation, ruin, with with the wounded and dead lying everywhere. The soldier continued, his voice almost desperate, "Are all dead?" Kana was also carried in for treatment. The soldier reported on, his voice full of pessimism. "Even Kana is unconscious." The leader exclaimed in astonishment, his voice disbelieving. "Even Kana?" He covered his face, a worried expression clear on his features, and continued, his voice full of disappointment. "How pathetic. How could we fail to take down one monster with so many people?" Captain Bitch was equally panicked, his voice full of confusion. "Does that mean no one here can stop Kenzie?" At that moment, outside, amidst a sea of blood, a reporter was on the scene, his voice urgent. "We are reporting live from Sector B12, where a disaster has just occurred." The camera panned to the corpses lying in pools of blood. The male reporter's voice continued, hauntingly, "The area is currently filled with dead bodies." Everyone in the restaurant watched the news intently. The male reporter continued, his voice grave, "Stay tuned for more updates on the attack." The man, Vano, remarked, his voice full of worry, "Wow, things are a mess down there." The couple also spoke in astonishment, their voices full of fear. "It even killed children. What a merciless monster." The woman added, her voice full of sorrow, "Those poor souls." A belligerent man shouted, his voice full of dissatisfaction, "I don't think I can get through tonight sober. Give me another drink." Back at the Busan Association base, the leader gave an order, his voice steely, "Captain, open the lower bulkheads and lure the monster through there. We must prevent any further damage to the ship." Captain Bitch objected, his voice full of worry, "But if we do that, Kenzie will start attacking the passengers on the lower level." The leader, for his own benefit, said decisively, his voice cold, "It will leave when its hunger is satisfied. I want the bulkheads open now." The captain was astonished, his face beaded with sweat. He shouted an order down to the reporting soldier, "Open all the bulkheads on the lower level." The soldier immediately obeyed, his voice submissive. "Yes, sir." Captain Bitch was startled. He looked towards the door and called out, his voice full of surprise, "Who's there?" Surprisingly, the person standing outside the door was Lita. Her turquoise eyes gleamed in the darkness. He asked doubtfully, his voice full of confusion, "Aren't you?" The leaders were equally surprised, not understanding what was happening. Suddenly, behind Lita, Kenzie appeared, huge and terrifying. Two soldiers screamed in panic, their faces pale. The monster, its body covered in wounds, suddenly swung out a giant tentacle. The monster's force was so strong, it made the little girl's hair whip back. The sea monster once again attacked the soldiers, destroying everything in a frenzy. The monster struck even more violently, so much so that it punched a large hole in the ceiling. The leaders were terrified, their faces drained of all color. The old leader screamed, trembling, his voice full of despair, "What is the monster doing here?" Without a word, they all scattered, trying to escape. He screamed again, his voice filled with terror, "Someone help!" The old leader, with his white hair and beard, suddenly had his eyes roll back, his mouth agape in horror. Behind him was that ferocious monster, getting closer. Its huge hand destroyed everything, turning the once normal room into a pile of rubble and ruin. The monster's act of slamming down on the ground made the restaurant's ceiling shake violently and continuously. More and more dust fell, obscuring the view. A panicked woman asked, her voice trembling, "What was that?" Kenzie continued to slam on the floor, relentlessly. After a moment, the monster broke through the restaurant ceiling, causing everyone there to panic and scream. 3 customers looked towards the monster, exclaiming in terror, "It's the sea monster." Its hand with sharp claws flung all 3 of them into the air. Terrible screams and drops of blood began to pour out, staining an entire area red. The monster created an incredibly loud noise. The side of the ship had been pierced by Kenzie, leaving a gaping hole. Bota, outside, was trying to hold on to a flimsy ladder. Kenzie had really pissed him off, that bastard. After a moment, he used all his strength to climb up, drenched in sweat. His eyes were red, full of anger and surprise. He steadied himself, looking at the wreckage the monster had caused. Captain Bitch and the leaders lay motionless on the ground, blood everywhere, a horrific scene. He exclaimed in astonishment, his voice disbelieving what. Bota suddenly turned, his eyes widening in surprise as he looked in one direction. He was completely stunned when he saw the figure of a little girl standing very close to the monster. Kenzie raised its blood-stained hand, lifting Lita closer to it. The little girl showed no fear. On the contrary, she very calmly turned to look at Bota. He shouted in fear, his voice urgent, "Lita, get back. It's dangerous." The little girl calmly replied, her voice still steady, "It's okay, Bota. She's keeping me safe." Bota tried his best to persuade her, his voice full of worry. "What are you talking about? Come over to me." Slowly, the monster seemed to have no intention of harming the little girl. Its blood-soaked eyes looked gently at Lita. The little girl's eyes also did not leave Kinsey, not even for a moment. Lita reassured him, her voice certain. She thinks I'm her child. Bota couldn't stand it anymore, seeing the little girl in danger. He shouted, his voice filled with terror. No, that's impossible. Come over here, Lita. The sea monster's blood-stained eyes stared at Lita. But the little girl was not afraid, still facing it. The sea monster's eyes widened fiercely as it stared at the little girl, thinking Lita was its child. Bota was so scared his eyes went wide. He shouted, his voice desperate, no, that's impossible. Come over here, Lita. As the sea monster and Lita were still looking at each other strangely, Sonia suddenly leaped high into the air, her hand tightly gripping a long, sharp sword, flying straight towards the sea monster, preparing to strike. Bota saw this, speechless with surprise. She slashed hard at the sea monster's wrist, severing it in two, blood splattering everywhere. Lita was startled, quickly clinging to the monster's severed hand. The sea monster let out a fierce, pained cry. Then, Sonia and Lita jumped down to the ground together, and then ran in panic when they saw the sea monster swing its arm to attack. Sonia turned pale, quickly grabbing Lita and running for her life, tried to escape the terrifying sea monster. But Lita, her face still cold, without a trace of emotion, stared at the sea monster. The sea monster was angry, its eyes bulging, and it swung its arm towards Sonia, who was holding Lita. Sonia saw Bota and quickly shouted, her voice urgent, Bota, dodge. He heard the shout and quickly turned his head to look behind him, and saw something flying straight towards him, scaring him so much his face turned pale. Then, Sonia held Lita tightly, while Bota quickly ducked, letting the object fly over their heads. A giant crane slammed straight into the sea monster's face, a deafening crash echoing. The monster was in pain, stunned, blood splattering from its body. In the crane was Goat. He controlled it and shouted, his voice full of excitement. Nice hit. Your turn, Bota. Bota immediately understood. He quickly ran towards the monster and shouted, his voice full of determination. He used all his strength to swing his sword hard at the monster. A slicing sound was heard, and blood sprayed out. The monster slowly fell from above. Bota risked his life, launching himself into the air. When a monster's head hit the ground, it was accompanied by a loud noise as it crashed into nearby buildings, causing them to collapse. Surprisingly, Bota also dove down at an extremely fast speed, his hand still swinging the sword, stabbing straight into the monster. The monster, in pain, let out a loud scream. Then the surrounding buildings shattered, and then both Bota and the monster fell freely to the ground. He tried to hold the sword tightly, embedding it deep into the monster, determined not to let go. The monster struggled up, rampaging wildly, collapsing the buildings next to it. Then, Bota was thrown off, crashing into another nearby building. Sonia watched Bota fall with worry, quickly calling out, Bota. Lita stared blankly at Bota, murmuring, Bota. Bota struggled to his feet, tried to endure the pain, despite his exhausted body. The monster now, its whole body covered in deep gashes, Bota and it looked at each other, neither saying a word. The monster's internal organs were exposed, with drops of blood falling. Bota smirked, an idea forming in his head. He muttered, so your weak spot is your stomach. Drops of the monster's blood dripped down, leaving it with no strength to move, looking pathetic. Bota was angry, gritting his teeth, his eyes bulging, his voice full of hatred. I will finish you. Suddenly, a figure appeared right in front of him, leaving him speechless with astonishment. In front of him was Kana, standing above him, her expression cold. Bota looked at her back in surprise, stammering Kana. Kana turned her face, looked at him, and smiled mysteriously. Unexpectedly, Bota quickly swung his sword, stabbing straight into Kana. Kana began to transform in a grotesque style, her chest becoming indescribably distorted. Bota was stunned when he saw his sword being swallowed by that jumble of flesh, leaving a gaping hole. Without another word, he swung his sword, slashing wildly at the wriggling tentacles. The monster's face went blank, looking bewildered as its limbs were severed, and blood gushed like a fire hose. Bota sprinted while roaring like a challenging hero. Come and get me. With that, he spun around, facing the giant hand that was about to grab him. The monster's tentacles didn't hesitate to smash the fences of the nearby houses. Bota dodged the attack with incredible speed. Then, like the wind, he plunged his sword deep into the monster's tentacle and ran for his life. With a determined expression mixed with a smirk, Bota used all his strength, running with his sword in hand, slicing a long gash through the tentacles. The monster's guts and organs poured out through the tears. Its flesh was also gradually torn apart with each fatal cut. The monster, in extreme pain, fell backward pathetically. Its weight was too much for even the sturdy city walls to bear. Then with an earth-shattering crash, it fell, constantly coughing up blood in agony. Seizing the opportunity, Bota continued to stab deep into the monster's body, causing it to stare at him with wide, disbelieving eyes. Bota strained, putting his force into an even deeper thrust, and then his sword seemed to hit something hard. The monster stared at him with hatred, while Bota grimaced, extremely tense as he saw the blade sink deeper into the hideous body. Bota's eyes were wide now, his voice growling with indignation. His fury exploded as he screamed, "Deserve to go to hell many times over." Immediately after, the monster's head began to swell abnormally. And then, boom, a horrific explosion. The monster's eyes, nose, and flesh splattered everywhere, a gruesome scene. The monster's force was so strong it made the little girl's hair. Sonia and Gong were, needless to say, dumbfounded with astonishment, while Lita maintained her cold expression, not saying a word, truly cool. The monster's blood rained down, but the little girl Lita just looked down calmly, not flinching at all. Everyone on the city wall was also shaken, staring with wide eyes. The reporters were quick, secretly hiding in a corner to capture the historic moment. Everyone was wide-eyed and open-mouthed, unable to believe what was happening before them. Bota, after finishing off the monster, stood proudly on its corpse, as majestic as a descended god. Those present couldn't help but be amazed, looking towards Bota with admiration amidst the downpour of blood after the hero defeated the sea monster.